Hello guys, this is Naruto-kun and we are back with our new fanfic, which is What If Naruto Assumed Wish of Whirlpool and Married Yugito Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and please subscribe to the channel. It motivates me to upload more fanfic like these for you all. Now let's start the fanfiction. Fire Country. Konoha, Naruto's apartment. It had been 2 days since the mission. His team had failed. They had gotten intel from a now deceased Akatsuki member called Sasori about an informant he was supposed to be meeting with at the Heaven and Earth Bridge. Kabuto turned out to be working with Orochimaru. The two groups had fought. Team Yamato against Orochimaru and Kabuto, or should I say him against Orochimaru. He had lost control. It was just for a second, but that was all the greatest of demons, Kyuubi no Kitsune needed. He had hurt his friend, Sakura, with nothing more than a swipe of a crimson tail. She had forgiven him. After all, he didn't have control over himself when wielding the Kyuubi's chakra beyond 3 tails of power. When the battle was over, Orochimaru and Kabuto fled with Team Yamato in pursuit. They tracked them to a Oto base and had tried to find their old friend Sasuke. After the 3 long years of separation between them, they had finally found him, but the moment he realized who they were, he tried to kill them all. That's when it happened. It was odd, but Sasuke had managed to enter his mindscape and was literally standing in the chamber where the Kyuubi's cell was located and forcefully suppressed the demon within. Before this, however, the Kyuubi had spoke to him, comparing his Sharingan eyes to that of a man named Uchiha Madara. After Sasuke, Orochimaru and Kabuto had left, both Sakura and Naruto had broken down seeing what their old friend had turned into. Now that he was home, however, his mind kept on wandering back to that one single name that the Kyuubi had uttered. How would the Kyuubi even know the name of an Uchiha? There was also that nagging voice at the back of his mind telling him that he had heard the name somewhere before and it wasn't Kyuubi. His blue eyes flashed with recognition. If he was an Uchiha, then he had to have been a citizen of Konoha and as such would be listed in the village archives in the library. Slapping his jumpsuit on, he dashed out of the door, not caring about anything other than finding some answers to the questions he had. He entered the library, not even noticing that the librarian who had always turned him away 3 years ago let him go in. He walked along the aisles looking for the U section. It was surprisingly small. He traced his fingers from book to book looking for the name Madara, and that's when he found. It wasn't a biography, it was a history book detailing the Shodai Hokage's reign from start to finish. What got his attention though was the image of both Madara and the Shodai on the cover facing one another like they were opposites. He took the book over to one of the empty tables before he opened it and began to read. He thought the book was amazing. Now he knew where he heard that name before, which was pretty obvious to him since it was a part for the academy written exam. But some things in this book weren't in the academy textbooks. With each passing page he was getting closer to finding out the answer to his question. He turned the next page, turned and nearly fell out of his chair in shock. Printed on the page was a very illustrated picture. Uchiha Madara standing atop the head of Kyuubi no Kitsune while they both were trying to kill the Shodai Hokage and thus creating a rather large valley. He remembered where he had seen it, the valley where 2 statues now stood as a monument to that battle. The Valley of the End. According to the book, Madara had summoned Kyuubi to help him kill Senju Hashirama at the place now known as the Valley of the End. He couldn't grasp the idea as to wanting to summon a demon to kill someone. It would be like making a deal with the devil, or in this case a demon. It made no sense, and yet he was looking at proof of such a thing. Why? He kept asking the question. Not getting an answer, the blonde stood and put the book back, knowing he had an answer to his first question, but this has given me another question that I need an answer to. Why did you attack Konoha, Kyuubi? Uzumaki Naruto knew no matter how much he hated the fox, he knew that the Kyuubi was sentient and didn't do anything without reason, but what were his reasons? Fire Country. Konoha Hospital. Hitaki Kakashi leaned back on his hospital bed with his one normal eye open, reading a small orange book. Suddenly he heard the door click, signifying someone had entered. 3 someones. The three stood in front of his bed and he looked up at them, not lowering his book. I heard about your last mission, and about Sasuke too, the copy nin said slowly in a saddened voice, seeing both Naruto's and Sakura's faces drop. We can't bring him back as he is now. We're simply not strong enough. Naruto hated to admit it, but he knew it was true. Kakashi nodded. Then you'll just have to become stronger, faster. Yeah, but how? Sakura was the one who asked. Kakashi smiled under his mask. Do you think I've just been sitting in here reading? I've been planning your next move from the moment Yamato told me. He shifted his gaze over to Naruto. In all honesty, you're the only one who can do this. After all, the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu does download its memories into the user when dispelled. The three looked at him surprised and he chuckled. In the right hands it is the ultimate training tool, even compared to Sharingan, though it is impractical because of the chakra requirements. But I don't have that problem because of Kyuubi. Naruto gulped slightly. Then why didn't Ero Sennin tell me about that little trick? The human mind isn't evolved enough to handle so much information at once before the age of 15, that's why Jiraiya-sama never told you about it. It is a kinjutsu for a reason, Kakashi explained. He then looked directly at the blonde and asked, what do you say, Naruto? The only remaining genin of the Konoha 11 simply stared, slightly numb. He couldn't feel anything. Going over everything that had happened over the last 3 weeks, Gaara dying only to be brought back, fighting Akatsuki, fighting Orochimaru, Sasuke. Your eyes reek of a chakra far fouler than my own, it reminds me of Uchiha Madara. Naruto shook himself before coming to a decision, I decline. The room's other 3 occupants froze, even Sai. Naruto had just said no to training with Kakashi, something he had wanted 3 years ago and never got. What did you just say, Naruto? I said no. The blonde genin gave him an even stare. I don't need any more power. What I need is answers, and I'll get them, one way or another. The room's temperature had suddenly just dropped and he made for the door. I'm not going to play around anymore. He was gone a moment later and everyone was just staring in disbelief at where he had just been. It was then that Team Asuma entered the room and Ino smiled at them. Hey guys, what's with the faces? Making his way through town towards the Hokage Tower, Naruto entered the building when he arrived and the receptionist told him to go on up since the staff pretty much knew the Hokage cared for the boy like a son. When he got up the stairs he reached the office door and knocked. When he didn't hear anything he knocked again. She's in a meeting, Naruto. Turning he saw Shizune holding some papers. Is there anything I can do for you? You can tell me when she'll be out. He half asked. The older woman smiled at him and waved him down the hall. She should be finished in about 10 minutes. You can wait outside if you want, it's just down the hall on your right. Naruto smiled at her and nodded. Thanks, Shizune Nekken. He bade her goodbye and sat down outside of the council chambers. It was silent for a few minutes before a voice shouted from inside the room, which he quickly identified as Tsunade's. What? Pressing his ear against the wall he listened in. Please understand, Hokage-sama. The boy has become a threat to the village, and with the recent attack on the cage, there is no doubt that we will come under attack if the boy remains here. I know that, but why exile him? What the heck are you people thinking? If he goes out there, then Akatsuki will. That was definitely Tsunade. Now Tsunade-sama. We know you care for the boy, but village security comes first, so he will be exiled instead of executed, a smug voice cut in. Not a chance in hell. I won't allow it. Tsunade yelled in anger. Uzumaki Naruto is a ninja and so falls under my jurisdiction. The council cannot dictate to me decisions concerning my shinobi. No, but with the daimyo backing the council we can, was the sickening banshee-like voice of a certain pink-haired councilwoman. The order is already given. Uzumaki Naruto is hereby banished from Konoha within 1 week. Naruto let his hands drop. He could feel something wet falling down his face. Bringing his hands up to touch it, he saw that it was tears. He was crying. He didn't need to hear anymore, he just ran. Ran through the tower, ran through the crowds, ran all the way home. Not even registering what he was doing, he began to seal his things in several scrolls and put them in pockets he had inside his jumpsuit. Once he was done, he stood up and looked out of the window at the Hokage monument before he clenched his fists and looked over at the picture of Team 7 from 3 years ago. He didn't look at it very long and put it face down before exiting the apartment, making sure to turn off the lights and lock it. Making his way towards the gate, he suddenly froze. Where am I going? What do I do now that I'm exiled? A memory from his training trip played through his mind. Flashback no jutsu begin. Even I can tell hatred is spreading, Jiraiya said, sitting in a lotus position. Hatred? Naruto asked, confused. The Gamma Sennin scratched the back of his head. I want to do something about it, but I don't know what, but I believe that the day will come when people truly understand each other. Naruto smiled, trying not to feel overwhelmed. That sounds hard. Jiraiya shrugged. If I can't find the answer, it will be up to you to do it. Naruto gave him his best salute. Okay, if that's what you want, I can't refuse. Flashback no jutsu end. Oh yeah, that was the last thing Arrow Sennin asked me to do for him. He smiled at the memory before turning back towards monument, and just like had done 3 years ago, he raised his fist towards the fourth face and clamped it shut. I'll be back, that's a promise. He turned and continued walking, noticing it was already night as he passed the 2 sleeping guards. Now where do I start? I really don't have a destination, do I? Damn. Whirlpool country, came a voice he knew very well. What do you want, Kyuubi? I told you I'm not going to use your power anymore, Naruto growled back. The great demon chuckled and spoke again. Ever heard the phrase, knowledge is power? If you want answers, then go to the Whirlpool country, you'll find your answers there. Alright, I'll bite. Why Whirlpool country? I haven't even heard of the place. Naruto yelled in thought. You're abandoned, alone in the darkness now yet again. The Whirlpool country is an island off of the coast of Water Country, surrounded by hundreds of small whirlpools that make traveling by ship to get there impossible, Kyuubi chuckled darkly. And why should I head there? For that matter, why are you helping me? Naruto has only ever trusted 3 people wholeheartedly in his short life, Sarutobi, Tsunade and Jiraiya. No matter what, you do not trust a fox. Putting his body on autopilot, he entered his mindscape and appeared at the demon's cage. I want an answer. It was a demand, not a request. Kyuubi chuckled, looking down on the boy. Since you aren't going to use my chakra anymore, I have to use my plan B. Naruto took a step back as a large cylinder shape rose from the ground. It was a scroll. This is a summoning contract for his kitsune. Naruto just stared at it for a good few minutes before looking back up at the fox. What's the catch? I get my freedom, Kyuubi said simply. Not going to happen. The Yondaime put you in here to stop you from causing more death and destruction, and I sure as hell am not going to set you loose so you can go on a rampage again. Naruto bellowed at him in anger. If that's the price for that scroll, then you can take your offer and shish. Shut up and let me explain. The giant kitsune flared his chakra. I would gain my freedom, but I would also become a boss summon of the kitsune contract, and as such have to obey its laws, one of which is I have to follow your orders until the day you die. I don't know. Kit. Where would you be without me at the moment? The great demon asked his jailer. Living a nice and peaceful life, Naruto deadpanned. Kyuubi chuckled at that. Okay, you got me there, but where's the fun in that? A small smile crept across the blonde's face. Well, a little fight now and then does make life a little more interesting. The two shared a good laugh at that before Naruto looked up at the demon seriously. Jokes aside, I need to know, will you attack anyone I care for? Kyuubi closed his eyes and spoke. I can't without your orders. Good, because if I find out you're playing me, I won't wait for Akatsuki to come and take you away. I'll just kill you outright, and that's a promise. They both knew he would find some way to carry out his threat. Kyuubi's gaze unwavered as the blonde signed his name in the scroll. By the way, he looked at the previous name in the scroll. Whatever happened to this Uchiha Madara? Kyuubi's only response was, Your answers are in Whirlpool country. Just before Naruto was about to leave, the demon spoke again. Your elemental affinity is wind, by the way. Try using your chakra to use the wind and cut through something. A leaf should do. Why? Naruto asked, turning back. Because if you're going to be my summoner, then you have to be the best. I won't accept anything less, and elemental manipulation as a good start towards being the best. The blonde was suddenly blasted out of his mindscape. Make your own jutsu while you're at it. Your arsenal is pathetic. And so the next few days Naruto spent training with the clone method while the fox gave him occasional advice, if that's what you want to call it. Fire Country. Konoha, Hokage's office. You wanted to see us, Hokage-sama. Tsunade turned from the window and looked over the many faces in her office. Yes, she spoke in a neutral tone. I have a mission for you all. Hokage-sama. Shouldn't Naruto be here for this if it's a joint team mission? Sai asked politely. The room suddenly got colder. Naruto's gone. Everyone of the Konoha 11 and their senseis were confused by that, so she decided to clear things up. The council in their infinite wisdom have went over my head to the daimyo himself and gotten Naruto exiled. The entire group was shocked by that. They're using this latest incident with Sasuke as a means to get him exiled, and they succeeded. Because of Kyuubi? Shikamaru asked, and none of the younger generation seemed shocked. So you all know. It wasn't a question. Half of the village figured it out a while ago, and most seemed to have gotten over the Kyuubi attack. Shikamaru sighed before continuing. Troublesome. So the council went behind your back to get him out of the village. If it wasn't for me, they would have executed him right then and there. Tsunade spoke the entire truth, and that actually shocked a few of the people in the room. She smirked suddenly though, but that's not all. Apparently the brat's gone missing. Nobody can find him, and he isn't supposed to leave for another 2 days. According to my Anbu, he's no longer in Konoha. He's already left? Ino asked, confused. When? Not sure. I've had Jiraiya out looking for him in case Akatsuki has captured him, the Hokage answered, shaking her head. Anyways, your mission is to find him and bring him back, otherwise I will have no choice but to mark him as a Nukenin. He's going to be exiled anyways. Why bring him back just to exile him? Choji asked, confused as to why they should bring him back if that's what was going to happen. Politics. I will be forced to send hunter nins after him if he is officially classified as a Nukenin, Tsunade replied. Wow, why are we talking like this? Surely there's something you can do to get him reinstated, Tsunade Shisho. Sakura spoke, trying to calm down. Please no. Not another one. With the daimyo backing the council, there's nothing I can do. Uzumaki Naruto was a lot of things. Headstrong, stubborn, half crazy, and has been known to switch between being a genius and an idiot at random, but there is one thing he is known for being that truly defines who he is: he's insanely lucky. It had been 3 weeks since he left Konoha. 3 weeks since he left the one place he had always called home, and in those 3 weeks, with the help of shadow clones and Kyuubi, he had progressed more than he did in almost 3 years prior. He still had a long way to go, but at least now he felt like he was progressing again. He was nearing the end of the seemingly endless forest towards his next destination, and finally exited the forest onto a giant open field that stretched for miles. You know, if I've ever had one other dream other than becoming Hokage, it'd be to see the whole world. Now that's a dream I don't mind, he heard the Kyuubi mutter before feeling him curling up to go to sleep. Wake me up if you need me. That's when he felt it. Whirling around, he spotted a squad of 14 nins exit the forest behind him, all wearing a Konoha hitai. I think you should stay awake for this, fox. That's probably a good idea. The Kyuubi's eyes snapped open as he opened his senses. Naruto recognized the group consisting of the rest of the Konoha 11, Kakashi, Asuma, Yamato and Guy. What are you guys doing here? Naruto, what are you thinking leaving the village? Kakashi half asked, half yelled. The blonde cocked his head to the side. They were going to exile me anyways. I thought I'd get a head start on those root Anbu guys the council will send after me. That doesn't matter. You need to come with us so you won't be marked as a nukenin, Kakashi explained. Naruto just shook his head. No can do, Kakashi-sensei. I'm heading in the other direction. Naruto, the copy nin warned. This is where we part ways, sensei. For better or worse, the blonde settled into a fighting stance. If you want me, then you'll have to use force because I'm not going back with you. Enough of this. Akamaru. Kiba charged forward with his loyal companion right beside him. He jumped and spun around, creating a miniature tornado, followed shortly by Akamaru, Yatsuga. Kiba, stop. It's too dangerous. Asuma shouted after them. You know you're no match for them all, kid, even if you have improved greatly, Kyuubi spoke in his mind. I know, but there are only 3 forms of facing an enemy. Fight, hide or run. I can't fight them all. There's nowhere to hide and they'll just chase me if I run. Naruto spoke in thought as he watched the two move like a drill towards him. You'll have to run, but first you must take out your enemy's trackers so they can't pursue you, the great demon informed him. As the 2 spinning man tornadoes closed in on the blonde, he started charging 2 randomly contained spinning balls in both his hands. I get it, but I don't want to kill any of them. You don't have to. Just don't screw up. With that, the link went silent. Just when the pair was a few feet away, he raised both chakra balls and hit them both while they were in midair, Rasenrangan. The 2 were suddenly spinning in the other direction before being blown back by the jutsu. They were sent crashing into a nearby tree and boulder. Kiba. Akamaru. Ino shouted, but the 2 were unmoving. That idiot. That was close. Naruto crouched down and settled into a taijutsu position. I know it isn't field tested, but I don't stand a chance without it. Taking a deep breath, he started channeling chakra to every corner of his body. Here we go. Guy. Lee. Go in fast and close to take him down. Both green beasts nodded and shot forward on Kakashi's order. Guy went in low and made to kick Naruto's midsection, only for him to narrowly dodge and Naruto to throw a punch in retaliation. The punch was barely a graze, but it sent Guy reeling back in pain. At that time, Lee came in behind him and landed a punch to his back but hurt his hand upon impact. Naruto grunted in pain before dropping to the ground and sweeping Lee's legs out from under him. With the younger of the 2 green beasts on the floor, he brought up his foot and then brought it down on Lee. Lee let out a yelp of pain before Naruto rolled away with Guy descending right above with a downward him. The blonde caught the kick with both of his hands and he pulled him down before punching him in the chest, making him hit the ground with a loud tremor. Both of the green-clad ninja were barely moving and Naruto was starting to feel exhausted. Damn it. Only used it for a few seconds and already feeling fatigued, the blonde thought as he saw both ninja start to rise again. I can't last much longer. Gotta think of a plan, and fast. Meanwhile, Kakashi was examining the engagement with his Sharingan. He's channeling chakra to every part of his body and constantly keeping it moving. Why? That's when he saw it. Both Guy and Lee had the image of a spiral on the areas where they had made contact with Naruto, and the copy nin's eyes suddenly flashed with recognition. Don't tell me he formed a Rasengan around his entire body. Guy. Lee. Fall back. Close combat is too dangerous with him. Both ninja complied and retreated to his side, where Sakura and Ino started healing their wounds. No chance that they're going to go away. Naruto asked in thought as he saw Kakashi and Shikamaru begin to analyze him. I guess not. You created a taijutsu style which uses the Rasengan with your understanding of a tailed shroud, didn't you? Kakashi asked with curiosity. This allows you to do more damage to your opponent, even if it's just a graze, and also protects you from physical attacks as well. Naruto nodded slowly before explaining. I call it the Rasengan, and for the record, it's not finished. I was going to infuse my wind elemental affinity into it to make it more effective and create the futon, Rasengan. Spiraling fist. Kakashi muttered under his breath. It seems he's trying to surpass you, sensei. Going through hand seals, he called out, Kaden, Gukaku no Jutsu. He exhaled a massive fireball at the blonde. Can't dodge. I guess I'll see just what the Rasengan is made of, Naruto thought as the fireball hit him dead center. Please tell me he survived that. Please don't be dead, Naruto. Kakashi thought in sweat and sighed in relief as he saw the blonde step out of the flames with a white semi-transparent shield around him. I see it also protects you from certain jutsus as well. It suddenly flickered out of existence before becoming invisible again, to a certain extent. Though if it's hit with enough force or with constant attacks then it will shut down quickly, he added mentally. The chakra requirements for something like that must be enormous. I can understand the demon fox's shroud because it's powered by 9 tails of chakra, but for a human like you, it must be taxing your reserves, the copy nin spoke knowingly. Naruto nodded and smirked. I've always had abnormally large reserves, sensei. Why do you think I failed the genin exam 3 times? He felt the Rasengan shred a few of Shino's bugs that had tried to grab onto him. Without another word he shot forward, intent on knocking out the one person in the squad who posed a direct threat given the information he now held, Shikamaru. Seeing this, Shikamaru sent his shadow at the blonde only for him to dodge while Yamato appeared behind him holding a spear of wood. Naruto got in close, forcing Yamato to back off while Sai moved to face the blonde. The Root Anbu pulled out his sword and tried to stab him, but it was merely deflected and appeared to be turning red from the constant friction of the Rasengan. When he knocked Sai away with a single blow, Neji and Hinata jumped in his way and charged in close. Sadly for them, their Jiyuken was constantly being deflected by the Rasengan and both were knocked back when 2 swift punches. Before Shikamaru could react, Naruto vanished in something akin to a flash of yellow and was suddenly inside his defenses. Naruto slammed a fully formed Rasengan into his gut, blasting him back until he hit the bottom of a nearby hill and fell into unconsciousness. Turning quickly, Naruto caught the knives Asuma was wielding against him, enhanced with wind blades. The blonde could feel the strain of the wind slashing at his defense before he shrugged the older man off and pulling him around to deliver a roundhouse kick to his midsection. Shintention no Jutsu, he heard before he felt a presence entering his mind. Well, at least this time he had no problem blasting the intruder out. It wasn't a Sharingan user after all. Get out of my head. Ino fell backwards as she was blown back into her body only to be caught by Choji. Naruto could now feel his chakra reserves almost gone and sighed as he shut down the Rasengan. Damn, out of power. Kakashi's Sharingan notified him that the powerful defense was no longer active and called out, "Your barrier is down, Naruto, come quietly and you will not be harmed." Naruto was panting slightly and looked around at the still conscious Konoha forces, Kakashi, Shino, Choji, Tenten and Sakura. I need to get out of here now. He smiled like a fox. Sorry Kakashi-sensei, but I'm not finished yet. He concentrated almost all of his remaining chakra into creating 2 Rasengans in the palms of his hands. Naruto, come with us right now or we'll be forced to use drastic measures. Kakashi warned and concentrated chakra into his hand, encasing it in lightning, Reikiri. Naruto looked at him and his jutsu sadly. You'd go that far just to follow an order? When Kakashi didn't answer, he continued, you know, I remember the first lesson you taught us, the only lesson you ever really taught us. Those who disobey the rules are trash, but those who abandon their friends are worse than trash. You're such a hypocrite. He closed his eyes for one moment, seeing the look of slight shock and horror at what he just said cross Kakashi's eyes. Goodbye Konoha, thanks for the memories. He slammed both chakra balls into the ground, Rasengan. Dust shot up, blanketing the entire area in a cloud of smoke, smokescreen. Kakashi shouted, unable to see though it even with the Sharingan. Shunpo no Jutsu. Though no one could see it, there were several flashes of yellow as Naruto Flash stepped out of the area. Futon. Datapa. Kakashi exhaled a large blast of air and dissipated the dust cloud, revealing that Naruto was nowhere in sight. He got away. Can anyone track him? Kiba. Neji and Hinata are down, Shino reported. My bugs were unable to grab onto him. Kakashi looked around at his badly beaten team, noticing Sakura and Ino were doing what they could to heal the wounded, but Sakura's behavior worried him greatly. She hadn't spoken throughout the entire encounter. He was worried that she might have cracked thinking yet another one of her teammates had left the village even if he was exiled, or that it was indirectly her fault. Patch up the wounded and then we'll return to Konoha. I doubt we'd be able to find Naruto now that he knows we're after him, Kakashi sighed, putting his hitai back into place over his left eye. Why? Choji asked. Kakashi narrowed his eyes at him, because though he dresses in bright orange he is almost impossible to locate when he doesn't want to be found. How do you think he pulled off his pranks all of the time? Lightning Country. Unknown location. Naruto finally stopped using his new jutsu which he had created a few days ago after he had remembered his battle against Gaara where he used Kyuubi's chakra to execute a super-powered jump up to where Gaara had stood. When he stopped using it he felt almost completely drained and collapsed on the ground, feeling for the first time in years depleted. Took you long enough, he heard Kyuubi chuckle under his breath. The Rasengan requires way too much power to maintain. Well, at least I've field tested the thing now. Naruto thought as raising his head slightly from the ground, hopefully this is far enough away. It took a full 30 minutes to recover his chakra before he was able to move again and he sat up straight. He stood a moment later and for once in his life was thankful that Kyuubi was sealed inside him because it regenerated his chakra at an alarming rate. You need to hurry and get out of here before anyone else shows up. Kyuubi spoke more as an order than a suggestion. He bit his thumb drawing blood and made several hand seals before slamming his bloodied hand into the ground. Kuchio's no jutsu. With a poof of smoke there suddenly stood in front of him a horse-sized five-tailed fox. I guess the Kitsune contract was the real deal after all. The fox looked over at him for a moment before speaking in a feminine tone. You must be the new summoner. It wasn't a question. Naruto scratched the back of his head nervously and explained, yeah, that's me. Do you mind if I get a ride? Sakino simply stared at him before nodding. I am Sakino no Kitsune. Father speaks highly of you. How far do you wish to travel? The blonde pointed up at a far-off mountain. To the base of that mountain. That's a day's journey at least. Another week's to get up it. Are you sure? Sakino commented. Naruto nodded. It would take 3 times longer to go around it. Sakino sighed. Very well, climb on and we'll get moving. He pulled himself up to mount the fox like you would a horse and she spoke again, fast or slow? Fast. Naruto half asked. Okay. She said simply as her tails wrapped around themselves. You might want to hang on. Sakino looked over her shoulder at him and grinned, like a fox. The end of her tail suddenly caught fire and exploded outwards away from them. Step 1. With the sound of an explosion echoing behind them, the fox took off at insane speeds towards the mountain, making Naruto have trouble breathing. Note to self. Never ask her to go fast again. Did I fail to mention she likes high speeds? You could almost feel the amusement in the demon lord's voice. She's your daughter, Naruto shot back. Lightning Country. Kumo, Southern Gate. It took a full week to make it to the Kumo, which was situated on the mountain summit. Sakino had returned to the Summon Realm per her request once they reached the bottom of the mountain. Over the week while he had been climbing up it, Naruto had been experimenting with adding wind to his various forms of Rasengan. He hadn't got it down yet, but he was close, very close. Damn it. It's not good enough, he thought, looking at his worn-out arm as he approached the village gates. I really need a bath and a nice comfy bed. I really hate bathing in rivers and sleeping on the ground. They had better have ramen. Halt. That's far enough. State your name and your business here. Naruto was pulled out of his thoughts by one of the 3 Chunin on guard duty. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. Well, I just want to stop here tonight. I'm just passing through really and I should be gone tomorrow, the blonde explained. The Chunin looked him over a few times before nodding. Alright, follow me to the Raikage's office. You will of course be watched by an Anbu at all times as per protocol. Naruto sighed in relief before nodding, led the way Chunin-san. As he followed the Chunin through the village he noticed right away the absence of any muttering and any hateful glares directed at him. People were going about their business, Stores all around the area were abuzz with activity and there were even children running around playing. Kumo itself was several large clusters of platforms, buildings and towers all over the mountain's peak with the Raikage Tower at the very top. All of this was interlocked in one way or another and it was one of the largest hidden villages in the elemental countries rivaling Konoha in sheer size. That's when Naruto dropped the question he had wanted to ask since arriving, do you know any good ramen stands? The Chunin stopped dead in his tracks and he turned fearfully, don't tell me you. What? Like ramen? Of course, it's a gift from the gods. You could see the sparkles in Naruto's eyes. Sweet Kami, not another one, the Chunin muttered, shaking his head and shivering in fear. He knew someone that had a very large addiction to ramen, now he had met another, they're both blonde too. Proceeding through the village they were nearing the Raikage Tower when suddenly all of Kumo shook with several explosions echoing in the distance. What the hell was that? Naruto asked, getting his bearings. The Chunin didn't answer, but when he saw some smoke in the distance he took off toward it. Hey, wait up. Naruto shouted, running after him, noting that the Anbu that was supposed to be tailing him wasn't there. The two arrived at the demolished section of the market district which looked like it had been through a war. What happened here? The Chunin looked around in horror, seeing other Kumo nins helping people out of the rubble. He spotted someone wearing a Jonin jacket pinned under a support beam and dashed over to him. Eric-sensei. He kneeled down beside the man who was his teacher. Are you alright, sensei? The man, now identified as Eric, grunted in pain but nodded. I've had better days. One moment and I'll get you out. The Chunin lifted the support beam with Naruto's help, allowing the Jonin to get out from under it. What happened here, sir? There were two of them, he gritted out with a wince. They appeared out of wearing black cloaks with red clouds and attacked Yugito-sama. He winced a bit more. Yugito-sama lured them away into the sewer system towards the central hub directly below us. She blew out the hatches and the valves to prevent them escaping and us from interfering. That explains the explosions. The Chunin clenched his fists. She's all alone in there. While this was going on, Naruto was deep in thought. Black cloaks with red clouds. Definitely Akatsuki, but that would mean this. Yugito would be a Jinchuriki. I guess it's true what they say, enemy of my enemy is my friend. How far down are we talking? Naruto asked, interrupting the two Kumo nins. They looked at each other before turning back. Just under a mile. We don't have the tools or the time to drill down there though, Eric answered honestly. Naruto didn't answer but instead charged a ball of spinning chakra. Just under a mile, might be close but I'll do what I can. He slammed it into the ground, burying it in deep and causing it to accelerate downwards, creating a hole in the deep into the ground. Rasengan. He turned to the two once he was done and said, catch up when you can. With that he jumped down into the hole, disappearing from view. As he fell, Naruto was in a deep discussion with a certain fox. So any idea which Jinchuriki this is? I might have an idea. Nibi no Nekomata. She's my mate, Kyuubi answered, mused. Naruto almost fainted at that. What? You're married? How the hell did that happen? Do not think so lowly of me as to go by the human's term. She's my mate, not my wife, Kyuubi growled in anger. You mean like soul mate? Naruto asked, trying to understand the concept. Yes, you hairless ape, Kyuubi replied mockingly. Naruto resisted the urge to hurt the demon lord, but I thought Sakino-chan was your daughter, she wasn't a cat. She gets her striking good looks from me while she gets Nibi-chan's personality. You could almost say Kyuubi was proud of that. You don't say, Naruto thought dryly. Far below the surface of the village, a giant purple cat made of fire with two tails was hit by a monstrous blast of wind and water from a man covered in black web-like strings and 4 masks. His partner, a silver-haired man wielding a scythe in his right arm, watched as the fire cat was suddenly destroyed, leaving a blonde-haired girl of 15 years of age crashing hard into a pile of rubble. She groaned from the impact and tried to stand, panting hard while still watching her enemy. Currently Yugito was in a state of mental shock. The Nibi no Nekomata, Her most powerful weapon and possibly the only reason she was still alive, was just defeated. It was ludicrous to even think a human could defeat it even if she could only turn into a miniature demon cat. It should have been impossible, but yet it was true, and after nearly an hour of fighting these people, if that's what you call them, she was reaching her limit. Just give up, little girl. You may have destroyed one of my hearts with that transformation of yours, but you can't win this, and you know it. The one she had found out to be named Kakuzu spoke in an almost amused tone. And for the first time since her mom died, Yugito was afraid. She gulped and narrowed her eyes, running through hand seals, Rai Bunshin no Jutsu. 15 lightning clones appeared at her side in a spark of lightning which shot out from her body. You won't get me. Hidan cracked a smirk. You're about to die, little girl. Jashin-sama commands it. He shot forward and 5 clones moved to intercept him. Kakuzu shifted to long-range mode and focused his most attack on her. Futon, Atsugai, Kaden, Zukoku. The combined heat and force of the two jutsus was essentially like an incinerator. The lightning clones were destroyed easily enough, and when the dust cleared, both Kakuzu and Hidan went on edge when they couldn't find their cornered prey. Keizuki. Kakuzu heard the shout and looked up just as Yugito swung her fire-covered arm down on him. Got to dodge, Kakuzu thought, trying to move out of the way. She sliced her entire arm, though one of his heart, and he skidded away clutching his now missing water heart mask. You. Damn it, I missed. She muttered under her breath and looked down in surprise as she felt a chain wrap around her. With a tug she was hurled backwards by Hidan, crashing hard into the nearby wall. Not bad, little girl, but not good enough. He charged forward, intent on finishing her then and there. Yugito watched him approach and closed her eyes, awaiting the pain to come. It didn't. She opened her eyes and looked up, seeing someone standing between her and the seemingly immortal man holding his outstretched weapon, which had been aimed at her neck. You know it's not very gentlemanlike to hit a lady. Hidan looked him over in shock before was on the receiving end of a monstrous punch to the jaw. He was hurled across the cavern before finally crashing hard beside Kakuzu with his scythe. You Akatsuki bastards are really starting to piss me off. The newcomer made a hand seal and 2 clones poofed into existence beside him. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Reinforcements. Yugito started channeling chakra to heal her wounds with medical ninjutsu and looked up at the one who had just saved her. Who the hell are you? The original turned to look at her and she could clearly see his face now. He had blonde hair held back by a Konoha Hitai, blue serene eyes, and 6 distinguishing marks on his face reminiscent of whiskers. We'll talk later, but right now I need to know what these guys are capable of, he spoke, and she nodded, leaning back against the wall. The one with the scythe. His name is Hidan, and though he doesn't use ninjutsu or genjutsu, he is extremely deadly at close range with that weapon of his. If he draws blood from you with that, then he'll be able to curse you and kill you without breaking a sweat, Yugito explained. The other is named Kakuzu. He's a bounty hunter of sorts from Takigakure who kills for money. He's a mid-range fighter who has 5 hearts he's taken from other people to prolong his life, and has also fought the Shodai Hokage. That last bit of information scared Naruto slightly. He uses all 5 elements, though he can only use 3 now since I destroyed 2 of his hearts. When you say hearts, he trailed off. Yugito nodded. He's died twice, but he still needs to die 3 more times before he stays dead. Naruto turned to his clones. You heard her. Yeah, we got it. 2 down, 3 to go. The 2 clones shot forward. Don't just go charging in. Yugito shouted at his stupidity. The 2 clones were easily dispatched by Kakuzu's web, threads stabbing them. Shadow clones will not help you here, Kyuubi Jinchuriki. Yugito looked up in surprise, noting that the man was talking to the one that had saved her, Kyuubi Jinchuriki. Is he one too? Oh, I finally get to see my Kyuubi-kun again. Yugito suddenly had a headache from her inner demon squealing. Naruto's eyes became slitted and he made a hand seal again. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 8 clones poofed into existence as Hidan landed at his partner's side. Not that old trick again, Hidan smirked. His smirk didn't last long. An earth-shattering bell-like screech filled the cavern, forcing Yugito to cover her ears as she watched Naruto's clones focus their chakra to the original's hand. Spinning its chakra constantly in all directions, she saw it take the form of a ball with a small series of blade appearing from the center of it. He held up his hand into the air above his head and suddenly those blades expanded, into the shape of a shuriken. Futon. Rasenshuriken, Naruto said its name. Hidan. Kakuzu looked over, getting his attention. It was then that Hidan noticed his partner was sweating slightly. Don't let that jutsu hit you. Even for us, if either of us gets hit by that, it would mean certain death. I've finally found someone who can kill me, Hidan spoke almost gleefully. Naruto and his clones shot forward, with his clones taking the lead. 5 clones got into a fight with Hidan but were no match. However, Naruto didn't really think they would make a difference anyways. One of the remaining clones jumped up and swung down with a kunai in a stabbing motion but was intercepted by several of Kakuzu's webs, piercing his body in midair. 2 more clones came from his side and he charged 2 of his masks, Futon, Atsugai, Kaden, Zukoku. The 2 clones were destroyed instantly from the 2 separate attacks. Kakuzu. Behind you. Hidan called out. Kakuzu turned and his eyes widened as he saw Naruto lunging towards him with his jutsu in hand outstretched. Shit. I've got to dodge. He skidded backwards and the jutsu mist slowly diminishing and fading from existence. I have you now. He shot his webs forward, catching Naruto off guard and piercing his body. No more playing around, boy. The blonde just looked up at his face. I wasn't playing. Naruto then poofed out of existence, making Kakuzu's eyes widen in shock. When did he? He heard a noise from below him and suddenly saw another Naruto shoot out from the ground with a hand outstretched in a fist. Rasengan. He called out, sending an uppercut to the heart collector, knocking him high into the air. Ow, what the hell did he hit me with? Kakuzu suddenly became very self-conscious as he heard the distinct bell-like screech coming from above him. Don't tell me all we've been fighting is clones. Looking up, he watched in horror as Naruto descended upon his with a chakra shuriken ball in hand. Let's see ya dodge me this time. He slammed the weapon into his chest, shattering all of the glass in the cavern under the high-pitched vibrations, and Kakuzu could barely get of a scream of pain as he was blasted downwards at insane speeds. Futon. Rasenshuriken. When he hit the floor, the chakra shuriken ball expanded, engulfing his entire body in a miniature tornado of wind needles that kept slashing at the cells of his body. He screamed in pain as every nucleus in his body was destroyed under the barrage until finally it stopped, making the cavern go silent. Naruto skidded to the stop next to Yugito and took out a kunai with an explosive tag attached to it. He threw it, cutting deep into Kakuzu's body before it exploded, killing him and destroying half of his body. Kakuzu's lifeless corpse hit the ground with a thud and Hidan growled in annoyance and excitement. Well, that's something I'd never thought I'd see. Naruto was panting hard though. Damn, it should have got them both in that last attack. Now I'm completely exhausted and I'd rather not try that again. He looked down at the hand he used to wield his jutsu. It was numb, very numb. It looks like you're out of chakra. Hidan's smirk widened as he closed in slowly, still holding his scythe. I need to do something or I'm dead. No pressure, Naruto thought wryly, trying to go through his options. He didn't have any. Hidan charges without any further delay and is within a few feet of him before he is sent flying backwards by a well-placed punch to the face. He slammed into the wall, leaving a crater and numerous web-like cracks in the wall. Grandfather. Yugito called out as the wreckage landed beside the 2, with Team Samui dropping down in front of the 3. Are you alright, Yugito-chan? The wreckage knelt down to hug his granddaughter. They didn't hurt you, did they? That punch he just gave Hidan, I wonder whose has more force to it, his or Obaken's. Naruto shivered at the thought and turned his attention to the sole remaining Akatsuki member. Hidan, come with me now. A plant-like figure appeared out of the ground behind the Akatsuki member. Hidan growled and then glared at the group. I'll get you for this. Brats. Zetsu pulled him into his little void with him. Team Samui unsheathed their swords and carved up the entire side of the cavern the two had been on. When the dust cleared, it was clear that both of them were gone, and Naruto finally let out a sigh of relief only to wince in pain now that his arm was no longer numb. Well, that's what I get for using a jutsu I haven't field tested, the ex-Konoha nin grumbled, clutching his arm. Yugito saw this and grabbed his hand, and before he could protest she started using her medic jutsu on it. You hadn't even field tested that jutsu. Then what the hell were you think of using it for? Are you trying to kill yourself? He winced as she worked. Well, the jutsu still isn't finished, and clearly it still has a few flaws in it. Not finished? She gulped and looked up at him with wide eyes. That jutsu of yours destroyed the nucleus of nearly every cell in your arm. Naruto grinned sheepishly at that. Well, you should see the other guy. She hit him on the head. Hey. What was that for? You reckless idiot. If you use that jutsu like that, you will destroy your chakra pathways and won't be able to use chakra anymore. She berated him. Is that any way to talk to the guy that saved your pretty little ass? He shot back, causing her to go red in the face. While this was going on, Team Samui were trying their best not to laugh. The Raikage coughed, catching their attention. Not that I mind you both bickering like an old married couple. Yugito glared at him. I think we should take this somewhere a little more private. Teams of Kumo nins were dropping into the cavern now, most likely to assist in damage control among other things. It's going to be one of those days. Is my life ever normal? Were Naruto's thoughts as he was involuntarily brought with them towards the Raikage Tower. Lightning Country. Kumo Raikage's office. All right. One of my chunin has told me you wish to stop here tonight. The Raikage asked, sitting down in his seat. Yeah, I'm actually just passing through on my way to Water Country, Naruto explained. The aged Kage raised an eyebrow at that. That's a strange place for a Jinchuriki to go. Usually Jinchuriki are treated worse there than bloodlines. Yeah, well, I'm just passing through there as well. He told the truth, or at least most of it. But there's nothing past Water Country but ocean. It's the edge of the continent. The Raikage scanned over him for a second. You're planning to leave the continent? In a manner of speaking, it wasn't a lie, it just wasn't the whole truth either. The Raikage eyed him a bit more before nodding, knowing the boy wouldn't tell him his destination. The place past Water Country is Whirlpool. Nah, couldn't be. That country has been destroyed, so there's no reason for a child to go there unless. Shaking himself from his thoughts, he nodded his head. All right, you can stay in the village tonight, but you must be on your way noon tomorrow. Understood? Yes, Raikage-sama. Jiraiya had pummeled manners into his head when talking to leaders, especially shinobi village leaders. Good. Now moving on. According to my spies in Konoha, you are a genin. Why? The Raikage couldn't seem to wrap his head around that bit of information. You used your spies to get information on me. Naruto was a bit surprised at that. After all, besides Kyuubi, there wasn't really anything special about him, right? Yes, now to answer the question, how can a genin, stressed it a bit, who without using his Biju's power take on 2S ranked criminals and kill one of them while delaying the other until reinforcements arrived? The Raikage deadpanned. That shouldn't be possible even for a Jinchuriki. Naruto looked a bit nervous at that. Well, I haven't really gotten around to taking the Chunin exams again. If the Chunin exam was the only way for a ninja to become Chunin, most of the villages would be filled almost entirely of genin. The aged Kage chuckled. Why haven't you gotten a field promotion yet? Field promotion? Naruto asked, confused. When a ninja does missions above their regular grade, they are promoted when they do enough of them, or if they're especially high-ranked missions, the Raikage explained. My granddaughter is one such individual. She took an extremely dangerous S-ranked mission and was promoted for it instead of showcasing her to the elemental countries at the exams and probably painting a bigger bullseye on her than what she has now. So you're saying I could have been promoted at any time? I've been doing high-level missions a lot over the years. The blonde looked saddened at that and asked mentally, did they not trust me? I think I know the reason you weren't promoted. You weren't liked in Konoha even by Jinchuriki standards, were you? When Naruto didn't answer, he continued. They probably didn't want you to become a chunin, preferring to keep you as a genin. Naruto's voice was barely a whisper. Yeah, I think you're right. The Raikage's lips shifted into a grin. Well, technically you did just do an S-ranked mission to protect my granddaughter from two S-class criminals. Since I'm a Kage, I could promote you to any rank you wished. Naruto looked up at him wide-eyed and his grin widened. I understand you have a summoning contract with the Kitsune. Naruto nodded with a gulp, not trusting his throat. Since you are no longer a shinobi of any village, I cannot promote you to any of the standard ranks. What I can do is instate you with Sennin statues like Jiraiya Dono and Hokage Dono. You are a Sennin now. You answer to no one and can travel anywhere you wish without worrying about inference from anyone besides Konoha. What? You don't want it? The Raikage asked in humor. Damn right I want it. Whatever manners he had for high authority figures had just been thrown out of the window when that offer was made. Congratulations, Kitsune Sennin. The Raikage almost laughed at his dumbfounded expression. I don't know what to say. Naruto looked between overjoyed and completely shocked. Not used to rewards, are ya, kid? The aged Kage asked sadly before he smiled again. Think of it as a thank you for saving my granddaughter. Yes, sir. Naruto nodded in thanks and asked. Will that be all, Raikage-sama? The Raikage simply looked at him for a few long moments before nodding. That will be all, Uzumaki Naruto. By your leave. The blonde stood and nodded before making his way to the office door. Wait. The blonde stopped and turned when he heard the Raikage spoke. Before you go, may I ask you one thing? Naruto nodded curiously. What is it? Are you by any chance related to Uzumaki Kushina? Naruto's eyes widened at that. There's another Uzumaki. But I thought it was just a name the Sandaime Hokage made up. Naruto narrowed his eyes. Who is she? Where is she? She was confirmed to have been in Konoha during the Kyuubi attack and died in childbirth, which is why I asked if you had any relation to her. You also act like her, a lot like her. The Raikage explained. If I had to guess, she would be your mother. You knew her. At his question, the aged Kage nodded in reply. Yes, she was the last Uzukage of Uzugakure no Sato deep in Whirlpool country. Despite not being an official Kage like the others, there were still very few who would trifle with her. Naruto's eyes widened at that. Uzugakure no Sato was Kyuubi no Kitsune's first target before attacking Fire Country. I'm not really sure how it got past Water and Lightning Country without us knowing about it though. Wait. Kyuubi attacked Whirlpool Country first? Naruto asked confused. Why? You're its Jinchuriki. Why don't you ask him? The Raikage asked. Furball. No answer. Kyuubi. Still nothing. He's not answering. Anyway, we should be able to do a DNA match between you and her, though I have a pretty good guess who your father is as well. The aged Kage spoke knowingly. Of course those two did marry. She just didn't take his last name to protect herself from his enemies. This might hold true for young Naruto-kun as well. He pressed the bottom on the intercom and spoke. Yugito-chan, are you still in the lounge? Yes, grandfather. Why? Came her reply. I want you to do a DNA test on Naruto-kun here and match it up to anyone on file. The Raikage may have phrased it as a request, but everyone knew it was an order. Isn't having people's DNA on file a security risk? I mean, that bastard Orochimaru is a prime example, Naruto pointed out. The Raikage nodded at him. It would be if the DNA was not mostly sealed away, similar to a blood seal, which requires a family member's blood to deactivate the seal. Naruto thought on it for a few minutes before he nodded in understanding. I get it. Then follow me, Kitsune Sennin, and we'll get this over with. The Raikage stood and passed him, exiting through the door. Naruto followed and asked, if this, Kushina, turns out to be my mother, then, who would be my father? The Raikage just smirked at him. Why, her husband Namikaze Minato, of course. Where have I heard that name bef? What? You have got to be kidding me. Naruto shook his head. No jokes. The tests came back positive, Yugito informed him in irritation. I know I didn't believe it either, but you are the son of the Nadaime Uzukage and Yondaime Hokage, Uzumaki Kushina and Namikaze Minato, results don't lie. But it can't be true. Naruto clenched his fists. Kid, have you taken a look in the mirror? You look like a teenage Minato if you take off your hitai, the Raikage commented. I had my suspicions when I first saw you, especially with the name Uzumaki. This would also explain why you're heading to Whirlpool. How did you? Because the only country beyond water country is Whirlpool, the Raikage cut in. Whether you like it or not is up to you now, but most of Kumo knows who you are now, and it will only be a matter of time before news about you starts to circulate around all of the elemental countries, all the way back to Konoha. The aged Kage added at the last second knowingly. And I knew your father before I became the Raikage. He wouldn't have grabbed a random child from the hospital to stop the Kyuubi, so he'd only use his own son. I know that, but Naruto trailed off only to be hit over the head by Yugito. Hey, what was that for? You were going all emo on us. He loved you so much he gave you a weapon to defend yourself with since he was leaving you alone, Yugito said almost as a shout. You can't tell me you wouldn't do the same if your roles were reversed, because I sure as hell would. Quote. She looked away. My father died sealing Nibi in me because he knew that to survive as my parents' child I would need its power. He didn't need to look to know that she was crying slightly. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Naruto averted his eyes sadly. You're right. I'd probably do the same thing, but that doesn't make it right. When Yugito didn't say anything, the Raikage spoke up. You'll be staying in my mansion for the night. I trust you have no objections. Naruto shook his head and sighed and looked down at his bandaged hand. I still need to get stronger though. Lightning Country. Kumo Raikage's mansion. Kit. Kyuubi's voice sounded in his mind. Naruto groaned and rolled over in bed. Kit. What Kyuubi? Can't it wait? I'm trying to sleep here, you know, the blonde growled in thought. Take a look through your memories of your battle against that sensei of yours when you used 4 of my tails, the fox told him. And why? Naruto asked with half-lidded eyes. You'll find it interesting, Kyuubi responded and started playing the memories of the battle in his mind. It was then that Naruto woke up fully as he saw the way Jiraiya had fought him. He was fighting all out. What is that? He asked out loud, looking through a particular memory. That is the Toad Sage mode, only accessible to the sages of the summoned toads. The monstrous fox let a grin cross his face. All summoned races have their own versions of Sage mode. The snakes turn their summoners into giant snakes. The slugs enhance their summoners' healing factor by over 10,000%, and the toads increase their summoners' raw strength 100-fold. Long story short, the Kitsune are no exception. You can make me a fox Sage mode? Naruto asked in confusion. I thought that would be something like a tailed shroud. In a manner of speaking, it would still be different from that pervert's Sage mode in that it won't have any jutsu or frog katas, which are, even I have to admit, extremely deadly to you lower lifeforms, Kyuubi explained. Hey, anyway, the fox Sage mode would instead give you enormous amounts of chakra, and I mean enormous in a fraction of my physical strength, the fox finished. Great. No cool jutsus, but instead I get a fancy new form. Just great. Naruto grumbled for a second before getting up from his bed. He opened the nearby cabinet where he had put his jumpsuit. Once he got dressed, he made his way for the door, only to stop when he saw it. There, hanging from the door, was a long red trench coat with the bottom outlined with black flames, and on the back of it was the image of a fox with 9 tails over the image of a Rasenshuriken. And emblazoned over that was the kanji for Fox Sage, which he nearly fainted from seeing. He let a wry smile form on his lips and put on the coat before moving towards the mirror. It looks like a custom job. It was probably the Raikage, Naruto though, and took off his hitai, letting his hair fall out of place. I really do look like Dad, don't I? He smiled and shook his head and looked down at his hitai with the Konoha symbol on it. Looking at it, he couldn't help but see his friends, all the family he had ever known. He clenched it in his hand and put it away before exiting the room, making his way towards the training grounds behind the mansion. Once there, he followed Kyuubi's explanations on and continued to practice until a certain someone decided to interrupt him. "What are you doing, brat?" Yugito asked from her position on one of the nearby training posts. "Don't call me a brat, I'm the same age as you," Naruto growled back. She chuckled at him and nodded. "True, but you're far too immature for your age." He was about to say something but stopped himself, remembering her tears yesterday. "What is it?" He shook his head. "Never mind." He then gestured for her to come over. "You want to join me?" "I never did like training alone." Yugito nodded silently and approached him. "Now I've got to ask, has Nibi ever offered you a summoning contract with the Nekomata?" Yugito nodded at that. "Yes, but I've never signed it. Why?" "Why don't you do that first and I'll show you what I have in mind?" Naruto was grinning like a fox. Unbeknownst to them, the Raikage watched from one of the mansion's windows, his bother at his side. They watched as the two blondes below were practicing gathering natural chakra and infusing it into their very own souls to enter what the Raikage knew as a sage mode only for summoners who have passed all of the trials of the Summon clan. In this case, the trial for them both was simply living as a Jinchuriki. He knew that they weren't anymore though. Kyuubi and Nibi returned to the Summon realm upon the signing of each contract, though it appeared their former hosts were still able to communicate with them. "You seem troubled, brother," Kurabi observed. Even though the known bad rapper was carefree most of the time, he had always been reserved when his grandniece and fellow Kumo Jinchuriki was plaguing his brother's thoughts. "You keep staring at the boy and Yugito-chan." The Raikage snorted. "I don't know what you mean. Akatsuki will try again, and next time, the Namikaze boy will not be there to save her," spoke the proclaimed guardian of Kumo in a saddened tone unexpected from him. The Raikage looked over at his brother and nodded. "Yes, but she would be ready next time." She won't. She's nowhere near ready for a bunch of S-class criminals after her head," Kurabi told him. "She'd surely be captured if she remains here." "Yes, but would it be safer to send her with the boy? He's head into water country and then onto Whirlpool. Do I have to remind you why that territory is so dangerous?" asked the aged Kage with cold eyes. Kurabi closed his eyes and shook his head. "If she remains here, she will surely be captured and killed by Akatsuki, but if she goes with the boy, she might have a chance to live through these harsh times." The Raikage merely stared at him before nodding slowly, agreeing with his brother. Yes, she would be safer if she were constantly on the move and one step ahead of Akatsuki. Kurabi smiled, slipping back into his carefree nature. "Don't worry so much, bro. Yugito-chan will be alright. Yo. Would you not start with the rapping at a time like this?" the aged Kage asked, annoyed. Before the Hachibi Jinchuriki could respond, the two felt a great pressure in the air and looked down at the two outside. They looked different. Naruto and Yugito stood with their hands held in a seal, the pupils in their blue narrowed into vertical slits. Then it was gone. Their eyes suddenly shifted out of existence, returning the two teenagers to normal, if that were even a word to describe ninja. It was then that the Raikage made his decision. Rain Country. Aim Akatsuki headquarters. So the Kyuubi Jinchuriki has fled Konoha, Deidara grinned. "Can I go after him? It will be a blast, so to speak." Hidan glared at the bomber. "You wouldn't stand a chance against him. He took out 3 of Kakuzu's hearts in one attack. The same guy that reattached your arm after yours was blown off fighting the Eyed Wonder. You make him sound scarier than he really is," Kisame said with a laugh. "He's nothing but a brat, a lucky brat, but still a brat." "That may be, but he isn't a normal Jinchuriki like the others, and now that he's traveling with the Nibi Jinchuriki, he will be hard to capture," Zetsu informed. "From what I can tell, they're heading towards the old Whirlpool country beyond Water Country, not sure why." Pain stepped out from the shadows and spoke, ending the debate. "Enough of this, the time grows near and those two are needed. Itachi, Kisame, you two are to intercept them and capture them." "Yes, Leader Sama." The two Akatsuki members spoke in unison. "Fire Country." Konoha, Hokage's office. You're sure about this? Tsunade asked, staring wide-eyed at the man she knew as her former teammate. Currently the other members of the Naruto Retrieval team plus Kurenai were assembled in the room. Most felt saddened, and in some cases humiliated, by the fact that Naruto was able to escape them and make it look easy while doing it. Kakashi himself couldn't help but feel like he had neglected his former student in favor of his other now traitorous student. He had hoped to make it up to Naruto with some training one-on-one, but instead the blonde had left and gotten far stronger than Kakashi would have expected even with shadow clones. The last engagement just proved it. Anyway, back to the situation at hand. My spies confirmed it. He took on two S-class Nukenin from Akatsuki and killed one before reinforcements arrived and drove the other one off, all the while protecting the Raikage's granddaughter. Jiraiya let a grin slip across his face. He's even went further with the Rasengan, completely surpassing myself, Kakashi and the Yondaime in the field of chakra and elemental manipulation, though the jutsu doesn't appear to be finished just yet. He killed an S-class Nukenin in one attack. Tsunade asked in disbelief, hearing the Retrieval team begin to whisper to each other. It gets better. Apparently as a reward the Raikage proclaimed him as a Kitsune Sennin along with his granddaughter and Naruto's new traveling companion the Neko Sennin. The Gamma Sennin let what he had said sink into the group. Even the Uchiha has yet to be classified as S rank, and it appears the brat already has quite a reputation in the ninja world. Especially since he invented an S-ranked space-time jutsu on par with Minato's Hiraishin no Jutsu, though it appears to be different but still give off something reminiscent of a yellow flash when used. What? The Hokage gritted out. What the hell? He trained with Jiraiya for 3 years and there was barely any improvement other than Kyuubi's chakra, and now, did you train him at all in his training trip or something? Because from what you're telling me the kid has done more in a few weeks than he has grown stronger in the past 3 years. Tsunade growled out at him. He simply stared at her before answering. He needed something to fall back on, so we worked on Kyuubi's power. In retrospect it was the wrong choice, but it doesn't matter anymore, Jiraiya answered. Great. Tsunade muttered, leaning back with a sigh. From what I hear he's being called quite a few names in the bingo books of other villages. Hell, Iwa's bingo book states him as having flea on-site status, being nicknamed the God of Flash and Kiri. I don't know why, but they consider him an army, not a man. Everyone was shocked to know he had become so famous away from Konoha and were even more shocked by what they learned next. I also know where he's going. Tsunade bolted up from her seat. Where? If we know where he's going we may be able to catch him. The Gamma Sennin shook his head. He's heading to Whirlpool country. Both Tsunade and Kakashi froze at that. What did you say? The Hokage stuttered, gulping. His destination is Whirlpool country, Jiraiya reiterated. Whirlpool country? Where's that? Asuma asked, not understanding the place's significance. I've never heard of it. Naruto. It's his mother's homeland and where Kyuubi no Kitsune was first spotted before it attacked Konoha, Kakashi answered, seeing everyone's eyes widen, especially the adults in the room. There's more. Naruto has found out why he was chosen as Kyuubi's Jinchuriki. The room suddenly went deathly quiet. Nobody moved. Tsunade and Kakashi were staring at him in horror. What do you mean? Sakura was the one who asked. The Yondaime Hokage. Namikaze Minato was a man of honor. He wouldn't grab a random child and use him to defeat a demon, knowing the life the boy would lead. Not when his pregnant wife went into labor mere moments before Kyuubi attacked. Jiraiya spoke in utter serious, making most of the room's occupants go pale. In the next 24 hours the Raikage will let the world know that the only son of Namikaze Minato and Uzumaki Kushina has been banished from Konoha for simply being a Jinchuriki. His full name is Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto. He's the son of the Yondaime Hokage and the Nadaime Uzukage, Tsunade finished, solemnly, shaking in fear. After a few minutes of silence, Kiba said barely above a whisper, "My God, what have we done?" Sound Country. Odo Base Delta 5. Uchiha Sasuke, the supposed last Uchiha in existence, was not in a good mood. No. He was definitely in a foul mood after hearing that Naruto, the Dobi, the dead last, the one he thought of as beneath him, had surpassed him yet again by gaining S-ranked status in the bingo book and taking down an Akatsuki member before him. What's more, the Dobi had apparently taken him down with just one attack, something Sasuke was angered beyond measure at, knowing none of his jutsu could do the amount of physical and area damage that Naruto's jutsu could do, judging from the report. Naturally, Orochimaru was also pissed at this. A one-shot kill jutsu was something he'd always strived to learn, and yet he could never find one. Now he had found it, but it was in the hands of someone he had considered a failure. Sasuke-kun, Kabuto, Orochimaru rasped. Find that boy and bring him to me. Kabuto nodded, but Sasuke didn't comment. That jutsu will be mine. Dobi, I knew I should have killed you while I had the chance, the Uchiha thought darkly. Now I will. Your life has been spared on a whim twice already, it shall not happen a third time. Water Country. Beach. Naruto had set off towards Water Country with his new traveling companion. Yugito and the girl's grandfather had given him 2 scrolls for jutsus he thought the two could use. It took a full day to get down the mountain and 3 more days of continuous travel to get to the border, which was a river separating the two countries. Yugito now sported a dark purple cloak with the image of a cat with 2 tails over a red flame-covered sword emblazoned on its back, and over that was the kanji for cat sage. The two had snuck into Water Country, making sure to avoid the patrols, something Naruto knew how to do quite well considering his former career as a prankster. The two had stopped for a night in a nearby village but hurriedly left when a team of Kiri Chunin had appeared walking through the streets. The team hadn't spotted them, but they didn't want to risk it and so proceeded at full speed towards the ocean at the other side of the country. Of course they were mostly riding Sakino the entire way there. We're almost there, the fox spoke, notifying the two riding on her back as they traveled through the woods. I've never seen the ocean before, Yugito muttered. I've only saw it a few times, mostly on missions. Naruto commented from behind her. It's one of the few things I actually find beautiful. The now proclaimed Neko Sennin didn't say anything to that as Sakino finally came to a stop. Looking forward, she saw they were standing on a hill at the edge of the forest, and in front of them were the large open waters of the sea. Since it was midday, the sun was high in the sky, casting its glow across the water, making it appear a bright blue. The two then dismounted the fox, taking a few steps in front of her. Thanks for the ride, Sakino-chan. Say hello to your father for me. Naruto said, casting a look back. I'll do that. Until next time, Naruto-kun, Yugito-chan. With that, the fox promptly disappeared in a poof of smoke. Well, what are we waiting for? The Kumo nin asked, walking down the hill towards the beach with Naruto following close behind. In the trees just behind them appeared the remnants of the Konoha 11, Jiraiya, Kakashi, Asuma and Guy. There he is, and it looks like his new partner is with him, Lee said quietly as to not give away their position. Partner is right. She smells like a cat, yet she has the lingering smell of a fox, Kiba informed them. Jiraiya cracked a smile. You know, if the situation weren't so serious, I'd be proud of him for getting a girl, especially a blonde. Why a blonde? Kakashi asked, noticing the slightly angry looks on Sakura and Hinata's faces. Because blondes have more fun, Jiraiya told him before he settled into a neutral expression. Jokes aside, there's something that's scaring me at the moment. And what's that? The copy nin asked, getting curious looks from the group, having never seen the Toad Hermit look so serious. That girl, she looks like a teenage Tsunade, the Gamma Sennin stated with his eyes glued to the two forms below. Get ready to move out. A few feet away, Sasuke and Kabuto arrived, only seeing Naruto and Yugito down below walking down the beach towards the ocean. This is our chance. We should catch them by surprise, Kabuto suggested, caution. Humph. Like that Dobi stands a chance against me. Sasuke said, insulted at the fact that the older of the two would suggest such a thing. And there's no way a girl can face my power. You arrogant little fool, underestimating your enemy is a sure way to get yourself killed. Stopping, Naruto shot a look over at his companion and asked, "You do realize we're being watched, right?" Up in the tree, the two groups tensed and narrowed their eyes, preparing to strike when they heard that. Yugito nodded and replied happily, "Yeah, they're not very good." Turning his head toward the end of the beach, Naruto spoke barely above a whisper, but everyone heard it. "Well, are you going to come out yet, Akatsuki?" Suddenly, two figures rose up from the sand-covered ground. "Hello, Itachi, Kisame." "Hey brat. Long time no see." The shark man grinned, shouldering his sword. Itachi looked up, revealing his Sharingan eyes. "I'm afraid the both of you will have to come with us, Naruto-kun." The atmosphere in the area suddenly felt heavier. "Hey brat, who's your girlfriend?" Kisame asked, pointing at the Neko Sennin. "She's not my girlfriend," Naruto groaned. "We're supposed to bring you in, Naruto-kun." Itachi spoke in monotone, but he seemed bored. "I can tell you right now that is not going to happen," Naruto said simply with a wide smile. Itachi sighed at that. "All right then, I guess we have to do this the hard way." "You mean the fun way?" Naruto and Kisame spoke at the same time. Yugito looks over at the Kiri Nukenin and asks Naruto, "Can I have fish cakes for dinner?" "Only if you cook them yourself," the blonde replied. Kisame laughed. "So the girls got spunk. You don't do anything half-assed, do you, brat?" "Civilian girls are way too plain." That was apparently the wrong thing to say. "Then again, I always did like the girls with larger chakra reserves, if you know what I mean." Yugito whacked him over the head. "Hentai. It appears you have inherited your mother's inability to keep her mouth closed." Itachi crumbled, shaking his head. "Are we going to start already? I'm getting bored." Of course it was Kisame that said this. "Don't underestimate us," Naruto told him. "If you do, you won't last long." "This'll be fun," the swordsman said, readying his sword. There was a booming sound as Yugito shot forward, indicating she had crossed the sound barrier. Her target was Kisame. The swordsman grinned and moved to intercept with his sword at his side. She flew at Kisame, as in literally flew. A stream of jet blue flames were erupting from her feet, propelling her in a single direction. If you know what rocket boots are, think that, but with fire elemental manipulation. "Come here, girly." Kisame stopped and brought up his sword. "Keizuki." The Neko Sennin shouted, and her right arm was covered in superheated flames just before she was in front of him. There was a loud clang as her fire-covered arm clashed with the swordsman's blade. "Not bad." The Nukenin smirked and pulled back just to launch forward again. Yugito parried, and suddenly her other arm was covered in flames as well. "I'm better than you think." Suin Keizuki. While this was going on, Naruto appeared behind Itachi in a flash of yellow, Shunpo no Jutsu. Itachi barely registered the movement until the last moment and promptly dodged the next strike. He's faster than before. The Uchiha murderer traded blows while moving backwards, but was surprised to feel a painful stinging sensation after even a graze from Naruto's attack. What is that? Some form of ninjutsu. It's dangerous to fight him at close range. Skidding away, he started making hand seals before inhaling a large breath. Kaden, Gukakyu no Jutsu. A large ball of fire was exhaled from his mouth and accelerated towards Naruto. Said blonde merely took the hit dead center. "Is that the best you got?" The Kitsune Sennin held out his arm and the flames were blown out by a blast of wind. "At least try and make me break a sweat." Itachi let an amused smirk cross his face. "Very well." His Sharingan shifted into its true form. The Mangekyo Sharingan. "Look into my eyes, Naruto-kun." Unfortunately, that's exactly what our hero did. Tsukuyomi. Naruto froze, suddenly finding himself in a distorted world where the colors were inverted. "I am not going to play games with you, Itachi." In the real world, there was an echoing pulse as a wave of pure chakra shot out from Naruto's body and continued for about 10 feet before dissipating. Chakra Nami. Itachi narrowed his eyes as he saw Naruto raise his head towards him and glared. "You didn't really think I wouldn't have developed a counter to genjutsu since our last battle?" The older Uchiha smirked. I had my hopes." In the trees above the beach, the Retrieval team and Odo team watched in shocked silence. Jiraiya and Kakashi, especially knowing the extents of Tsukuyomi, they couldn't believe their eyes at the level the four were fighting at. Sasuke was seething in rage since even with his Sharingan was activated he couldn't copy any of the four's jutsus. They weren't using hand seals to use their jutsu, they just executed them perfectly without much effort and so the Sharingan wasn't able to copy them. The most frustrating part for the young Uchiha though was the fact that even after everything that had happened and all the training he had the Dobi was still Itachi's objective. Oh, he knew it was because of Kyuubi, but the fact that the Dobi was suddenly a lot stronger than their last battle and appeared to match Itachi at every turn. Something he doubted even himself could do just yet. Damn you, you've surpassed me again. Sasuke snarled at the thought though outwardly he kept a calm face. Kabuto on the other hand merely watched in fear as the four below exchanged blows. This isn't the Naruto-kun we faced at the Heaven and Earth Bridge. He's equal with Itachi when even Orochimaru-sama wasn't and he's not even using Kyuubi's chakra. Kisame break off, Itachi ordered getting a nod from his partner. As the swordsman broke away from his fight Itachi turned his powerful eyes on the teenage girl, Amaterasu. Black flames of death shot out towards her at insane speed. Got to stop it. Shunpo no Jutsu. In a flash of yellow Naruto appeared at her side and raised his hand. Futon. Rosin, a large plate in the image of a spiral made out of pure chakra and wind materialized to protect the two from harm. The flames hit dead center and Kisame smirked. This is getting interesting. That defensive jutsu's original purpose must have been to deflect Amaterasu, Itachi mused watching as the flames died down revealing Naruto and Yugito unharmed. You're going to have to do better than that, Yugito grinned. Sage mode activated. The ground shook as both Naruto and Yugito shifted into their respective forms with the sand under them suddenly shifting slightly with a loud roar. Their now slitted eyes held no fear of the two and Kisame couldn't help but grin even as a shockwave washed over the area snuffing out the black flames of Amaterasu. Finally getting serious. About time brats. The audience were shocked when Kisame said that. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Two clones appeared at the Kitsune Sennin's side. Two clones aren't going to do anything against them, thought everyone in the audience, but the two Akatsuki members' faces had suddenly gotten serious. Yugito held up her hand to the sky and suddenly the temperature in the area had increased drastically forming dark clouds of thunder above them. Her hand was suddenly engulfed in fire once more but this one was a lot bigger and gave off a lot more heat than the previous stage. Naruto held out his hand and the clones start pouring in their chakra and wind elemental power. A bell-like screech echoed through the area as the ball of chakra in his hand suddenly formed four small wind blades around its surface. Holding the jutsu up the wind blade expanded taking the shape of a large shuriken. That cannot be good for my health, Kisame commented tensing. So these are the Kitsune and Neko Sennin, Itachi thought narrowed his eyes. As long as we can dodge those jutsu we'll be okay. Hidan did say they were close-range jutsus. Yes, that's what he and Kisame would do. Dodge them both and then move in for the kill. Sadly that wasn't meant to happen. Futon. Naruto began not taking his eyes off of Itachi. Twisting his body he threw the jutsu like he would a regular shuriken, Rasenshuriken. Kaden. Yugito shot her flame-covered hand out like she would a punch, Daikazuki. The blade of fire shot out like a lance in a compressed beam of superheated magma. They threw them, Kiba exclaimed. Everyone's eyes widened upon seeing the powerful jutsus being sent at the Akatsuki duo. How can they use something so condensed and in the Rasengan's case quick-spinning chakra at that range? It shouldn't be possible. The amount of concentration should be too much for anyone to handle. Kakashi watched in pure shock feeling rather than seeing such powerful attacks being used. With those two jutsus, I don't think they can lose, Jiraiya watched silently. Good luck Naruto. Dodge. Kisame shouted seeing the danger and tried to jump away narrowly missing the edge of the fire blade that had come at him. He rolled away feeling an intense blast of heat wash over him as he saw the ground where he stood a moment ago turn to glass under the extreme temperature, Well fuck. Itachi saw the chakra shuriken come closer and closer at an alarming speed. I must act quickly, something like that would kill even me. As he dodged, he made a single shadow clone poof into existence. I hope this works. The clone grabbed him and threw him away from the shuriken just as it passed within a few feet of the clone. This will be close. The chakra shuriken exploded in a large ball of tornado of wind, destroying the clone and everything else within its 20-meter radius. Incredible. Itachi slammed into the hardened sand and rolled back to his feet and continued running, feeling the wind from the tornado sphere trying to pull him back. It's trying to pull me in. The jutsu suddenly exploded in a repulsion of wind, throwing Itachi 10 feet before he finally came to a stop, panting slightly. Now I see how Kakuzu was defeated. Of course it would take something like that to bring him down. Naruto just grinned as he replied, "You dodged it. I shouldn't really be surprised." The two shadow clones beside him suddenly started charging another jutsu, but I doubt you can dodge me forever. Eventually I'll get you. Who wants fish cakes? Kisame watched in frustration as Yugito's arm was engulfed in flames once more. Kaden. Daikazuki. The flames shot out in a condensed stream of heat. Not again. The mist swordsman growled, performing a series of hand seals. Sweden. Daibakufu no Jutsu. A large wave of water rose from the sea and met the blade of fire halfway, canceling each other out. Grr, that was too close. The Kumo nin narrowed her eyes at the shark man. He used a water jutsu to neutralize it. Of course, since fire is weak against water-based attacks, a lower-level water jutsu would be able to stand up to a higher-level fire jutsu. Futon. Rasenshuriken. Naruto threw another attack at Itachi, hoping to catch him this time. This time, however, Itachi was ready for it. Amaterasu. A series of black flames shot out from the Uchiha's eyes and intercepted the incoming jutsu, causing it to detonate prematurely in a vacuum of wind and flames. Both of them were blown away from each other, breathing hard. I can't keep this up for much longer. He may not be as strong as me or have as much experience, but he's holding his own with stamina alone. Kisame had known this too, and knowing that at long ranges his opponent was deadly, he shot towards Yugito at full speed, bringing his sword to bear on her. She ducked under the swing only to roll out of the way as he brought the blade down on her, blowing up the sand as it touched the ground. The Neko Senin parried another swing with her flame-covered arm and knocked him away. Raikyu. She shouted, hurling a ball of lightning at the Kiri Nukenin. They seem to be evenly matched. Kakashi observed, he's surpassed me. Are you kidding? I think he's almost surpassed me when I was in my prime. Jiraiya couldn't help but grin at seeing his student progress this far in such a short amount of time. I couldn't be prouder. Should we jump in now? Kiba asked, slightly fearful, seeing the devastating jutsus the two sides were throwing around. Do you want to be caught in the crossfire? Shino asked him as if he were stupid. After a few moments of silence, it was clear there wasn't going to be an answer. The ball of lightning hit Kisame dead center in the chest and lightning exploded in all directions. Heh, I gotcha. Kisame, however, just grinned before he turned to water, dropping to the sand-covered ground. What? She felt a presence behind her and turned swiftly, but it was already too late. Suiro no Jutsu. Before she could react, Yugito was encased in a ball of moving water with Kisame standing beside it, holding it with his hand. I have you now, little girl. Skidding to a stop, both Naruto and Itachi caught a quick glance at their partners. It appears your partner has been caught, Naruto-kun. Surrender now and you shall not be harmed, the Uchiha told him. He was surprised to hear Naruto chuckle in response. Yeah, about that offer. I think I'll pass, and as for Yugito, she's got him right where she wants him. Itachi narrowed his eyes only for it to widen as Naruto appears in front of him holding a ball of swirling chakra. Your fight is with me. Rasengan. Itachi's hand was suddenly encased in electricity and he moved to parry the attack. Chidori. Sasuke seethed in rage at seeing Itachi use his jutsu. Itachi. You copied my jutsu. Oh dear, Orochimaru-sama isn't going to like this at all. Kabuto watched in disgust. You can't escape now, little girl. The swordsman held up his free hand holding his sword. Any last words? Yeah, I got two for you, Chidori Nagashi. Yugito's body was suddenly engulfed in electricity, shocking the water and by proxy Kisame himself. The mist Nukenin let out a yelp of pain as he was blown back, with both of them panting hard. I got the idea from one of Naruto's stories he told me about. Heh, you like it? You little bitch, Kisame growled, trying to catch his breath. Go fuck yourself, was all Yugito said while channeling more chakra to her arm, forming a blade of flames to encase it. There's not enough time to use Suiten. Daibakufu no Jutsu. Guess I've got to dodge instead. Kisame jumped high into the air, hoping to dodge the jutsu he knew was coming. Kaden. Dai Keizuki. The Neko Sennin yelled, unleashing her jutsu at the swordsman. A water clone suddenly appeared at his side and pulled him out of the line of fire as it shot past him, heading up into the sky above. Touching back down, he grinned. You missed, he said simply. Who says I was aiming for you? Yugito asked innocently, causing the swordsman to narrow his eyes at her. The sky suddenly darkened above them, with large thunder clouds forming. Itachi skidded to a halt not too far away and with wide eyes looked up at the sky and then at Kisame. Shit. Needing to act fast, he moved towards his partner, having an idea of what was coming. Kisame. Get down. The swordsman looked confused before he was tackled to the floor. Susanoo. Raiden. Kirin. Up in the trees, the Konoha Retrieval team were having a hard time remaining standing after a large dog-like monster made of lightning shot down from the sky and hit the beach with a thunderous blast, sending massive amounts of heat and shockwaves for 100 feet, almost blowing them away even at the range they were at. What the hell was that? Kiba asked in fear at seeing such a monstrous jutsu. Damn kid, you sure know how to pick them. Jiraiya gulped, remembering when he first saw Tsunade's super strength. Though I think you have a mother complex, he let a perverted grin cross his face. Not too far away, Sasuke clenched his fists in anger. That cloud bitch. That is my jutsu. Mine. It's bad enough I'm being upstaged by the dobi, but now this no-name bitch. Even if I did copy the jutsu from a Kumo nin, they should know that such power belongs to me. An Uchiha. Note. Superiority complex in its finest. Kabuto, on the other hand, it would be foolish to take them without reinforcement. He seemed particularly annoyed, though should the opportunity present itself we could capture the two. Note to self. Don't get on her bad side, Naruto thought with a sweat drop. Hearing a groan from the crater that was all that was left, he blew away the smoke using a jutsu he had gotten from the wreckage before they left Kumo, Futon, Daitapa. After the smoke and dust was cleared, both Akatsuki members were clearly seen. Are you two still alive? He heard a groan in response. Oh good, you're still alive, that means we can finish this. As the two Akatsuki members staggered to their feet, they suddenly went on edge when they heard the distinctive bell-like screech, Futon, Rasenshuriken. They looked up to see the jutsu sailing towards them, spinning frantically as it moved. Kisame. We leave, Itachi ordered, and his partner nodded. The two dived into the ocean, disappearing under the water as Naruto's jutsu expanded upon contact in a ball of wind and water before finally exploding with great force. Touching down beside him, Yugito shot him a questionable look, only for him to shake his head in reply. The message was clear. They got away. Let them go, Naruto told her. We're in no shape to pursue them anyways. We used our jutsus at their strongest level 3 times each, so we can't hold our sage modes much longer. So what now? The Neko Sennin asked, trying to catch her breath. Kuchio's no jutsu. Kichi no Gama. Tatsu no Gama. Following Naruto's exclamation were 2 puffs of smoke signifying a summoning. Naruto. Huh, what the hell? Why did you wait until now to summon us? We've been worried, you idiot. Gamakichi shouted, getting ready to tackle him. Naruto held up his hands. Sorry, I've been sort of busy. The older of the 2 toad princes was about to yell at him again when he took notice of the blonde girl beside him. Hey Naruto. Who's the babe and what is she doing with you? Yugito's eyes flashed in anger. Don't call me babe, you arrow Gama. There was a resounding slap as Gamakichi was sent flying with a hand mark on his face. Naruto gulped, looking at his partner in slight fear. Hey Naruto, can I have some candy? Gamatatsu asked in a childish tone. Yeah, if you can give us a lift. Naruto half asked, half answered. The younger Toad Prince nodded and turned to the ocean. Sure thing, as long as I get some candy. Naruto turned to the Kumo nin and simply stared expectantly. You can't be serious. Yugito asked, not wanting to ride on a toad. Naruto nodded in reply and she sighed in defeat. Fine, at least this one is the lesser of two evils. She climbed on as Naruto turned to Gamakichi. Do you mind if I get a lift? The elder Toad Prince just sighed and pointed up at his back. Climb on. The moment he did, the two toads carried the passengers onto the water and out to sea. We're leaving. There's no reason to stay here any longer, Jiraiya told the group. Before Sakura could say anything, Kakashi interrupted. Agreed, we'd lose them in the ocean. We should report back to Hokage-sama right away on this development, Yamato commented, and suddenly the group was gone. Come Sasuke-kun. We're leaving, Kabuto told him, making the Uchiha glare at him. Why are we not going after them? He sneered. The medic nin just smiled. Pursuing them out at sea would be utter foolishness, you know that. I need more power. Sasuke's sneer never left him as the two left. Dobi, I will kill you for this humiliation. Alright, start from the beginning again please. Tsunade rubbed her eyes, feeling her stress building. Naruto and that girl with him, Yugito I think her name was, were able to match Itachi and Kisame blow for blow throughout the entire confrontation. Their teamwork was brilliant. They covered each other's weaknesses perfectly, making sure neither of them took any potentially fatal damage, Jiraiya explained in a reporting tone. What level would you say they're at? The Hokage asked, knowing the council would just love this news. Sanin easily. Borderline low cage if they were to use those sage modes of theirs, the Gamma Sennin mused. Sage mode? Where'd they get them from? Tsunade asked, narrowing her eyes at her former teammate. Well, we know they signed summoning contracts with the Kitsune and the Nekomata, so probably from them, Jiraiya answered. You know all summoners have their own versions of Sage mode once they reach a certain level. Excuse me, what's Sage mode? Sakura asked, never having heard of it before in all her years of studying under the Hokage. Jiraiya looked at her for a moment before explaining, I suppose you could call it a rite of succession for becoming a sage. A summoned race like the Toads, for example, are able to give their summoners a means to increase their overall abilities, and once a sage mode is triggered would signify a new sage being born. Each summoning contract has a different set of skills and abilities, not to mention the risk involved in each one. Risk? Sakura asked, slightly worried. Well, depending on the sage mode, it could very well end up backfiring and harming its user, or worse. That's the reason I didn't teach it to Naruto during our 3 years away. If I did, he might have turned into a toad statue, explained the Gamma Sennin before he pointed his thumb at the Hokage. Hers grants her the ability to heal from just about anything, making her virtually unkillable for as long as it's active. It's a more stable and powerful version of her kinjutsu. Most of the room's occupants seemed surprised at this. Mine grants me access to a set of jutsu called senjutsu and physical strength far surpassing that of any normal man. Like I said, it boosts a person's power 100-fold, putting you on par with a kage. When Sarutobi Sensei used his monkey sage mode, he was once able to fight off the other 4 cages by himself, and because of his unmatched strength he was nicknamed the God of Shinobi, Tsunade added. Yeah, the old pervert was invincible. He could decimate an entire army by himself in a matter of minutes, rivaling that of Minato's raw power with his Hiraishin no Jutsu. Jiraiya grinned, remembering the many battles his sensei had gotten in during the wars. What about you, Kakashi-sensei? You've got a dog summoning contract, right? Sakura asked, remembering seeing her sensei summon before. The copy nin nodded and replied simply, I was unable to complete the training to become an Inu Sennin because of my Sharingan Eye. It interfered with the Sage mode activation process. Jiraiya and Tsunade nodded in agreement. Of course, since the Sharingan bloodline is not a part of your regular DNA, it couldn't work properly. Kakashi sighed, still reading his orange book. It can't be helped. What about you guys, sensei? Tenten asked, remembering the man also had a summoning contract. I also have a summoning contract with the tortoises, but I turned the offer down wanting to be a taijutsu specialist, Guy answered truthfully. Anyway, even if I were to use my Toad Sage mode, I think even I would be hard-pressed to defeat either of them now. I'd be able to win, don't get me wrong, but that would only be because I have more experience than either of them, the Gamma Sennin finished. I'll tell you right now, facing them both together would be utter suicide, even for me. Very well. You're all dismissed until further notice. Tsunade sighed and the Retrieval team bowed before leaving with only Jiraiya remaining. Is something wrong? On our way back to Konoha, I stopped by one of my spy circles. They've found a lead on Akatsuki's base of operations and their leader. I'm going to go and check it out. Whirlpool country. Unknown location. They had been traveling for 3 full days before they finally reached their destination. The island was massive, surrounded on all sides by hundreds of small whirlpools preventing any access by ship. Fortunately, both of the Toad Princes were able to ferry the 2 blondes to the island, though they were exhausted by the end of it, though Gamatsu was more than happy when he got given some candy. The 2 summoned creatures had decided to stick around, wanting to continue on with them. As the group proceeded inland, the 4 had begun training themselves whenever they stopped, but kept on guard should they find anything dangerous. The island, however, was nothing like they had thought it was. The forests, the fields, hell, even the ground itself looked and felt dead. What is this? Yugito asked, looking around at the silent forest they stood in. Everything here is dead, said Naruto. There's no life anywhere. Gamakichi spoke in a saddened tone, examining the ground. What could have done this? I think I might have an idea, Naruto answered. Kyuubi, if you can hear me, then do you mind explaining? After a few moments of silence, it was clear he was not going to get an answer. Let's keep moving. The group walked for another 30 minutes before something odd happened. Yugito hit an invisible wall and fell down. Ow! She winced, covering her nose. What the hell just happened? Yugito, you alright? Naruto asked, helping her up. Yeah, but I think I just walked into something, she answered, checking to see if there was any blood. There's nothing there, Yugito, the Kitsune Sennin told her, looking at where she was walking. I'm telling you, something's there, she growled in frustration. Air, Naruto? Gamakichi asked, seemingly tapping the air itself. That's solid. Putting up his hand, Naruto touched whatever it was, feeling a seemingly invisible flat surface in air. Is that a genjutsu? It would have dispelled if it were. I think it's a barrier, Yugito told him. Naruto nodded. Alright, let's see if we can crack it. And how do we do that? Asked the elder Toad Prince. The newly nicknamed God of Flash just grinned like a fox. By blasting it with everything we have, of course. Hey, Gamatatsu. He turned to the yellow toad. How about we test out that new jutsu we've been working on? The younger Toad Prince smiled widely and nodded, turning to where the barrier was. Whenever you're ready. Yugito, Gamakichi, get behind us, Naruto ordered, and the 2 followed it. Gamatatsu charged himself full of chakra and inhaled a large amount of water vapor from the air, liquefying it in his mouth. Alright, let's do this. Naruto charged chakra to his hand, merging it with Gamatatsu's, and pressed his hand to the toad's back. Now. Futon. Gama Teppo. He called out as the younger toad let loose a massive blast of water from his mouth in a stream. The blast hit the invisible barrier with tremendous force and sprayed across the entire area until a rather loud sound of glass shattering echoed through the countryside. As the mist cleared, structures could clearly be seen, most of which were ruins, but there were a few that were still standing, like a certain tower in the center which could be seen even at their distance. Air, if you don't need us anymore, Naruto, I think we'll be going. Dad's probably worried about us, Gamakichi spoke up, getting their attention. Yeah, we should be fine from here on out. Thanks for the help, guys, the Kitsune Sennin thanked. Anytime, Gamakichi waved before he disappeared in a poof of smoke. I'm hungry. Gamatatsu whined before disappearing as well. Naruto sighed before turning to his companion. Well, are we going? When she nodded in reply, they continued on inside. This place is more like a graveyard than a hidden village, the Neko Senin shivered as they walked down the street. That or a ghost town. Naruto shivered when she said that. Please don't say that. You're not afraid of ghosts, are you, Naruto? She asked slyly. No, I'm not, he answered quickly, shaking his head. Right. She spoke in sarcasm as they continued walking. After a few minutes of walking through the deserted village, they arrived at the wall surrounding the tower like a barrier, taking notice that the entire place looked to be ready to collapse. Nice place for a vacation, huh? Even an idiot could tell she was being sarcastic. He didn't say anything to that, but instead jumped over the wall and spotted the entrance along with something else. She jumped down beside him a moment later and looked at what had made her partner stop. Right in front of the entrance was a small platform in the shape of a spiral. In its center, however, standing straight up in its pedestal, was what caught their eye. It was a sword, a double-edged sword. She had never seen a weapon so beautiful in her life. The sword's handle was plated crimson and the blade itself was an eerily silver, with its edges seeming to shine in the daylight sun. Without a word, Naruto stepped towards the platform and raises his hand to touch the sword when it suddenly seemed to pulse like it was alive. He jumped back as a ball of red light shot out from the handle and hovered before them. Some kind of booby trap? Yugito asked in thought as the two nins thought get ready to fight if necessary. They didn't need to, however, as the light seemed to expand and brightened. They took note of a figure standing in the light. What is that? The light died down, revealing a long red-haired woman who looked about 25 years old, dressed in cage robes and wearing a light blue hat with the kanji for Whirlpool written on it. She raised her head, revealing her face from under the wide hat. She was beautiful and seemed to radiate a sense of authority with a hint of childishness. The woman looked over at the two and her eyes widened at the teenage boy. Minato-kun. Is that you? Naruto took a step back when she reached out a hand towards him. Who are you? How do you know my father? The woman stopped at that and Yugito stared intently, trying to analyze the red-headed beauty. If you're here to take revenge or some crap on me to get back at Dad, then speak up before we kick your ass, lady. Why your father? But that would mean. Her eyes suddenly widened in recognition and she smiled at the boy's attitude. You're Naruto. Answer the question. Who are you? Naruto almost shouted, though his partner seemed to relax. That attitude? I used to be like that when I was younger. The woman removed her head and cleared the red hair from her face. My name is Uzumaki Kushina. I am the Nadaime Uzukage of Uzugakure no Sato and your mother. The two teens were left speechless. Mom, was all the blonde male could get out before taking another step back. No, you can't be here. You're supposed to be dead. Naruto, the Neko Senin said nervously, catching his attention. She's not really here. I can't sense anything from her. She's not real. I'll have you know I am very real. Kushina spoke in an annoyed tone before she grabbed the younger girl by the shoulders and smiled. See? But you have no life readings. I can't sense you, meaning you can't be alive. It's against the laws of nature. Yugito argued, still trying to find the woman's signature but finding none. That's because I'm already dead. The redhead smiled sadly and put the girl down. She sighed and turned to the blonde boy. What you see now is nothing more than dust and echoes. She suddenly grabbed him and pulled him close. My, how you've grown, Naruto. Can't breathe, Mom, he rasped out before she let go, letting him gasping for air. She waved her hand dismissively before turning to the blonde girl. Air, do I know you, miss? Yugito looked a bit embarrassed before she bowed and stated her name. Sorry, Uzumaki-sama, my name is Ni Yugito. She's traveling with me. Naruto stepped in. Kushina looked the girl over a few times before she sent a suspicious look at the fox boy. It appears you take after Minato-kun in more than just looks, Naru-chan. Both teen blushed at that, with Naruto's arms shaking in protest. We're not like that, honest. Yahoo would want this guy. He's a total idiot. Yugito shouted, pulling on her fellow blonde's cheeks. I take great offense to that, Naruto grumbled after she let go. Really? Good, she shouted happily, only making him pout more. Oh my, Kushina giggled at their antics. My mistake then. After they had calmed down, they had fallen into silence until. Are you really my mom? Are you really Uzumaki Kushina? Naruto asked, staring at the woman intently. I am, but yet I'm not. It's hard to explain. I suppose you could say that the original Uzumaki Kushina was my creator, the redhead tried to clarify. What do you mean creator? Yugito asked, confused. Are you some kind of genjutsu? The older woman smiled and shook her head before explaining. I'm a copy of her. A shadow clone would be an adequate description. But unlike a shadow clone, I can last forever as long as I don't use chakra or complete or fail any order I am given. Order? What was the order your creator gave you? Yugito asked. Kushina just sighed before answering. The original Kushina created me so that if anything ever happened to her, then I'd act as a sort of last will and testament. The two teens took a step back. Last will? Naruto asked, barely above a whisper. The redhead smiled. She used every trick she knew and more just in case. It was her greatest achievement and her last. Why? The Kitsune Sennin asked, plagued with that single question. Kushina answered with a wide smile and her eyes closed, because she left me to deliver a few words for the son she never saw. Mom. Naruto didn't know what to say. Her image suddenly flickered. Oh dear, it appears I used more power than I thought. Kushina shook her head. It looks like I have less time than I would have liked, so I'll have to make this quick. Mom, can I ask you something? He asked. Of course, she replied. What do you wish to know? I want to know why Kyuubi attacked both Fire Country and Whirlpool Country. Naruto asked, stated, surprising Yugito. He never mentioned that, though I didn't actually ask him why we're here, the blonde girl thought, looking between him and the now seemingly saddened copy of his mother. It's all our fault, she finally rasped out, meeting his gaze. Kyuubi attacked because it was trying to kill both Minato and I. The two teens stared at her, surprised. Kyuubi was sent to kill us by his summoner while I was pregnant with you, Naruto. Wait, someone summoned the Kyuubi? As in the supposed walking natural disaster Kyuubi no Kitsune? Yugito asked, completely freaked at this piece of information. Your eyes reek of a chakra far fouler than my own, it reminds me of Uchiha Madara. Naruto grabbed a hold of the older woman's shoulders and asked in an almost frightened tone, what was the summoner's name? Please tell me. Kushina shook her head. I don't know, we never got his name. We didn't even see his real face, he always wore a mask. He let go of her and asked, where can I find him? She shook her head again and answered plainly, I don't know, but even if you did, you wouldn't be able to kill him or even touch him. He managed to hold his own against both Minato and I together. He saw through everything we did and we could barely even touch him. He had some kind of defense that made him invulnerable to almost everything we threw at him. So I guess even the Rasengan wasn't enough. Naruto half asked. Rasengan? How do you know about that jutsu? Redhead asked in surprise. The blonde boy just sighed and formed a ball of spinning chakra in his hand. Ero Sennin taught it to me 3 years ago. Kushina just remained silent for a few moments with eyes wide before asking, you learned it 3 years ago? You look about 16. How long did it take you to master that jutsu? 3 weeks to learn it and another week to master. It wasn't even field tested until I shoved it in a bad guy's gut at the end of the final week. You should have seen the look on his face when I blasted him into a boulder, Naruto told her with a grin when he remembered how he won the necklace that was around his neck. Kushina herself and even Yugito were stunned at that. The Rasengan was an A-ranked jutsu designed by the supposed strongest Hokage in history, which took him 3 years to create and the Gamma Sennin a full year to learn. For a child no older than 13 to master a jutsu of that level and in the time he did was unheard of by either of the two females. I must say, that is surprising, Kushina finally managed to say, having recovered from what she had learned, and smiled at the boy. She sighed once again before continuing, knowing they were getting off of track. Anyway, yes, even the Rasengan wasn't able to hit the guy, though Minato did manage to land a few blows with his experimental Rasengan. You mean an elemental one? Naruto asked. She turned to him wide-eyed. How do you know about that? He seemed annoyed now. Well, let's see, I've been slugging around a futon Rasengan for just under 2 months since I was banished. It wasn't his fault, but he let slip a very dangerous piece of information in that sentence. You were what? Kushina exploded, grabbing his collar. What do you mean you were banished? As the saying goes, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, especially from a redhead. Well, I was thrown out because I lost control of the furball a while back against Orochimaru and got one of my teammates injured. He saddened as he remembered his pink-haired former teammate. Kushina dropped him and looked away. Minato, you idiot. She sent a punch at a nearby wall, causing it collapse from the impact. That stupid fool. I told him not to put too much faith in the people, but would he listen? No. She shook her head. I knew it. It wasn't bad enough he split the seal in two, but he went and put his faith in the people again, only to have our son pay the price. It appeared Itachi was right. Naruto did inherit his inability to keep his mouth shut from his mother. In the middle of her rant, she had mentioned one very important detail. Hey, what do you mean my seal split it too? Naruto nearly shouted in surprise. The redhead stopped her rant and looked at him with a pale face. You heard that? She asked. He gritted his teeth in response, loud and clear. Kushina gulped. Yeah, about the seal. It only contains and filters half of Kyuubi's power and soul, so he is naturally evil all of the time. Excuse me, what the hell is that supposed to mean? It was Yugito that asked. After all, being the Jinchuriki of the Queen of the Damned, you learned a few things about souls. One of which is knowing that you can't split a soul into good and evil. It's not possible. Separating a soul into good and evil creates instability. Why would you do something like that? It goes against the laws of nature. You can't have one without the other, so why would you even attempt such a thing? Kushina scratched her head nervously before answering. Well, the only things that can hurt that masked guy were my sword, Minato's unstable futon Rasengan, and highly condensed attacks like those from the Biju. So you wanted me to use it as a weapon just in case? Naruto asked, thinking over what she had said. Kushina nodded in reply before explaining further. Yes, the seal can be completed once again if you were to summon the key toad Minato entrusted the key to. I think his name was Garotora. You do have the toad summoning contract, right? When he nodded, she continued. The key seal he holds is meant to restore the seal to maximum power and fuse the Kyuubi back together into one being once more, allowing you to control more tails of power, though you can still be overloaded because of the pain involved. Wait, I can control more tails? He asked, stunned that little bit of information. Well, yes, in theory, though it would be up to you to control it. It's like a kunai in the aspect that if the wielder is not strong enough, the weapon will be nothing more than that, the redhead said knowingly. Speaking of weapons, she turned towards the sword lodged in the spiral pedestal. This weapon here was my personal sword, our family sword. Wait, I thought you said your sword could hit Kyuubi's last summoner through his defenses, is this it? Yugito asked, circling around the pedestal. Kushina nodded. It is the sword of the Whirlpool and only ever wielded by the heir to the Uzumaki clan throughout each generation. She turned to Naruto and smiled. This sword is the pride and joy of our clan. As the only remaining heir to the clan, it belongs to you, so treat it well. This sword is mine, asked the Kitsune Sennin as he stared at the blade. Kushina chuckled before nudging him towards the weapon. Go on, claim your inheritance. He stepped in front of the sword, looking down at its handle, seeing the light reflect off of it. Yugito watched with a small smile as he wrapped his hands around its hilt and in one quick motion pulled it out of the pedestal. A gust of wind whizzed through the area as two images appeared on the blade. On one side was the picture of a toad decked out in a long coat with a dagger in hand and a small smoking pipe in its mouth. The other side was the image of a roaring orange fox with 9 tails. A light suddenly shot out from the sword and hit Yugito. For a moment nothing happened until the light dimmed and a beautiful golden bow appeared in her hands with a spiral carved over the image of a cat with 2 tails engraved into the weapon. Before either of the two teens could say a word, both weapons disappeared in 2 flashes of lights each. They noticed that on the back of both of their right hands were storage seals in the shape of spirals. What just happened? The Kumo nin asked, looking at the back of her hand. I must be leaving now, I'm afraid. Good luck. Kushina smiled sadly but slightly hopeful at the two. Summon those weapons like you would any other, with a few choice words and a little faith. We'll do that, thanks Mom. Naruto clenched his fists as he watched the last legacy of his mother fade away from existence. I'll make you proud. You already have. And then she was gone, faded away into memory, forever lost to the world of the living. After she had disappeared, Yugito looks from the spot the redhead had stood towards her partner. So, what will you do now? I want to leave, he finally answers, looking at his hand. There is nothing left for me here now. The Neko Senin nodded and looked around. Where are we going? Naruto thought about for a moment before he answered. I know exactly where we can go, Wave Country. It had been 3 months since they had left Whirlpool Country after they had salvaged whatever they could from Uzugakure's ruins. They had mostly just found some scrolls on water elemental manipulation and a single water jutsu scroll. It wasn't really surprising since the country was surrounded by nothing but ocean, creating a natural defense against attacks. It would have been obvious that the country's former occupants would use the island's natural defenses to their advantage. Unfortunately, only Naruto could actually use the jutsu, since after Yugito had pretty much shoved a chakra elemental paper into his hands, he had discovered he had a water elemental affinity. Note: it's pretty obvious since his last names are Uzumaki and Namikaze, both have a reference to water in some way. The two had set off towards Wave Country, but every time the two had stopped to sleep, Naruto could always hear the faint sounds of sobbing coming from the other tent. Though he wouldn't admit it, it had him worried every time. When he asked Yugito about it, she would always say it was nothing and had continued to give that answer since the two had started traveling together 4 months ago. It still had him worried though. Upon their arrival to Wave Country, however, they came across something they weren't expecting to see. What the heck is this? Yugito's voice could be heard for miles. In front of them was the large bridge connecting Wave Country to the mainland. There wasn't anything really wrong with it other than the fact it was extremely long, but its name is what caught the two travelers' attention. Its name, printed on the archway above their heads, stated quite clearly, Great Naruto Bridge. What the hell? She asked again, turning on heel to face her partner. Do you mind explaining, because I want an explanation. Well, you see, Naruto laughed nervously. My old team and I might have saved this entire country from total annihilation. Alright. Then why did they name the bridge after you? She asked, looking between him and the sign. He scratched the back of his neck in embarrassment. Well, I sort of sparked this country's courage and defeated one of the nins trying to destroy the peace here. Yugito frowned at that. She'd seen the reports on the Battle of Wave, as the locals had been calling it, and so the rest of the world had come to know it as well. The report didn't match what Naruto had just said. What the report said was that Hitaki Kakashi and Uchiha Sasuke had fought both Kiri Nukenins and won before finally moving on to kill Gato. It never mentioned anything about Naruto or the other teammate, just Kakashi and Sasuke apparently saving the country of Wave. Once the two had crossed the bridge and entered village, Yugito had fully accepted that the mission report had been falsified, as when they walked through the streets, children and adults alike stopped to stare in awe at them, more like him. These people are looking at him as if he were their hero. The report was definitely falsified, probably to keep a lid on the demon's success, the Neko Senin thought bitterly, looking over at Naruto's smiling face. Hey, well, if it isn't the loudest ninja I ever met. They heard from in front of them. They looked up and saw a man who looked to be in his mid-60s standing in the middle of the street dressed formal wear befitting a man of authority. Welcome back, brat. Tazuna, you old drunk. How's it going? Naruto waved, running up to the man with Yugito trailing a few feet behind. Same old, same old. I'm the mayor now, by the way, he said offhandedly before looking over to the Kumo nin. It's good to see you again. I heard what happened in Konoha. Naruto looked away at that, trying to forget what had happened only 5 months ago. I'm surprised you heard about that. Are you kidding me? The entirety of the elemental countries knows that the son of the Yondaime Hokage was exiled from his home just for being born. The aged man shook his head. Still can't believe you're that man's kid though, Tazuna just laughed. Nevertheless, I never thought you'd show up here. Half the elemental countries have sent out hundreds of ninja to look for you. The Kitsune Sennin laughed nervously. What were you expecting, you old drunk? I'm actually surprised they didn't kick me out sooner. He shook his head, clearing his mind. Never mind that. Do you mind if we stay for a while? I mean, if it's not too much trouble. Tazuna nodded, looked between the two blondes. Sure, and of course your little girlfriend here can stay too. Naruto blushed at the thought and waved his arms in defense. She's not my girlfriend. Please. Who would date this idiot? Yugito gestured towards the ex-Konoha nin. He's reckless, gets into more trouble than anyone I've ever met, and is a pervert. If it wasn't for the fact that he's saved my life, I would have gladly remained in Kumo instead of staying with him on this crazy ride. You don't have to be so forceful about it, Yugito, Naruto grumbled under his breath, turning away in a huff. Tazuna eyes them for a few moments before dragging out his words. Oh, I see, my mistake then. Shaking his head, he gestured towards the nearby lake. Come on, you can both live at my place. Inari. Dinner's ready, yelled a female voice from the house's kitchen. I'll be right there, Mom. A young boy of 11 yelled back, dashing down the stairs. Once he entered the kitchen, he sat on one of the chairs at the table. So what are we having today? You'll find out in a minute, Tsunami answered cheerfully. Inari nearly gagged and groaned out, Mom, can we please go out to the dock to eat or something? He whined. It looked like the woman's eyes were glowing red. Are you saying my cooking is bad? She asked dangerously. Inari waved his hand in defense. No, I just thought you might want to do something different. He laughed nervously as he saw his mother's gaze settle. That was a close one. He looked around, taking notice of his grandfather's absence. Where's Grandpa? I thought he'd be here by now. Tsunami looked over the stove to see how it was doing as she answered, he should be home anytime now, you know how hard he works these days. The boy sighed at that. I know, but I barely get to see him anymore. Suddenly the doorbell went off, alerting to the two. Would you get that, Inari? His mother asked. The boy nodded, standing up and moving towards the door. Taking a look out the peephole, he immediately recognized his grandfather and opened the door. When he did, he took notice of the two blonde teenagers at the door with his grandfather. He looked between the two and Tazuna before his eyes widened as he recognized 6 scar-like birthmarks on the male teen's face, knowing that only one person had them. Naruto Nissan. Inari stuttered and heard a clatter of dishes from back in the kitchen. Suddenly his mother appeared at his side too. Why, you're really here? Hey Inari. Tsunami-san. Long time no see. The Kitsune Sennin suddenly found himself tackled to the ground by the boy. Nissan. Inari shouted, trying to hold back a wave of tears. As if to answer Naruto's unasked question, Tazuna spoke up. Ever since we got word about your exile, Inari-kun has been worried sick about you. The male teenager nodded in understanding before pushing the kid off of him gently and crouching down onto one knee so that they were eye level. Come on now. I thought you weren't going to cry anymore. It's not very manly, you know. You do want to be manly, don't you? Sniffing slightly, Inari rubbed his eyes and nodded. Sorry about that, Nissan. Don't worry about it. Naruto smiled, patting him on the shoulders, getting the young boy to calm down. He's good with kids, Yugito mused before she shook her head. What am I thinking? Why do I care? It's not like I like that idiot, even though she thought that she couldn't escape the feeling of warmth in her chest when she looked at the scene. Is this your girlfriend Naruto-kun? Tsunami asked with her attention on the Kumo nin. Yugito blushed at that and shook in frustration. I am not his girlfriend. She continued past them and entering the house angrily. Turning to her father, Tsunami asked as Naruto followed the blonde girl, what was that about? They have that sort of relationship, Tazuna replied knowingly and entered the house. Love, hate. My, this should be interesting, the woman giggled and headed back to the kitchen. Huh, was the only thing Inari could say as he didn't understand what they were talking about. After about 10 minutes the group could be found sitting around the kitchen table eating the seafood Tsunami had cooked, much to Inari's dismay. So you two, what brings you here? Tazuna asked before taking another bite out of his meal. Naruto stopped for a moment to answer, we need a place to lie low for a bit to plan our next move. He waved his hands in defense, don't worry, we won't be staying long, just a day or two before anyone decides to come knocking. The town mayor merely shook his head, I never said you couldn't stay, kid, to hell with any ninja that come by. This is a proud country and we have unbreakable will because of you. I'll be damned if it's going to fall just because some ninja want to kill you, so stay as long as you want. Naruto shook his head at that, thanks, but it would be safer if we kept moving. Tazuna sighed as his daughter handed him some sauce, well, I'm sure you'll be glad to know Konoha has been getting hammered for the last month or so. Both Naruto and Yugito raised their heads at that. What do you mean? The Kumo nin asked. The aged man seemed surprised for a moment before he explained, after you were exiled, kid, Wave and about 4 other countries have withdrawn their alliances with Fire Country because of it. Tazuna chuckled deeply. Snow Country and Wind Country with their ninja village were the first to back out of the alliance. Both blondes widened at the information. Are you joking? Yugito found it hard to believe. The mayor just shook his head in a negative. No, I'm not. The political arena is a mess because of this whole ordeal. Like I said before, you've got half the elemental nations out looking for you, kid. Putting his head in his hands, Naruto sighed audibly and grumbled. Great. Just great. Yugito groaned loudly. Well, that complicates things a bit. After dinner, the group had sat down in the living room talking while Naruto had some of his shadow clones do the dishes and clean up, much to Tsunami's delight. The conversations ranged from news about the other countries to the family's day-to-day lives. As it turned out, Inari was attending the local school that was built since Wave Country had prospered so much. At the end of the evening, however, there was a small problem. What do you mean we have to share a room? Yugito damn near shouted and pointed at her partner. Why do I have to share a room with this knucklehead? Naruto grumbled and Tazuna answered, gesturing to the other room. That is the only other room we have and it's used as a storage room, so unless you want to sleep on some crates then you'll have to share the guest room. The Neko Senin huffed and strolled into the room. You have a strange taste in women, kid. The mayor shook his head. Naruto waved his hand dismissively. I thought we told you there's nothing going on between us, we're just traveling together. He made to follow her. Stupid old drunk. Whatever you say, kid. Try not to be too noisy, will you? I do want to sleep tonight, Tazuna said after him teasingly. The god of Flash didn't respond, but judging by the blush on his face it was clear that he heard what the man said. He shook himself and entered. The room was fairly standard and fortunately or unfortunately depending on who you were had 2 beds. Yugito had unhooked her gear, mostly supplies, in her hooded cloak before dropping them on one of the beds closest to the bathroom door. Naruto didn't say a word as he hung up his trench coat on the nearby stand before dropping back on his bed looking up at the ceiling. After a few moments Yugito's voice penetrated the silence of the room. We've been using rivers and streams to bathe for the last 3 months. I'm going to take a shower. He didn't need to look to tell she was glaring at him. If you try to sneak a peek I will castrate you. She disappeared into the bathroom soon after. When he heard the water in the show start to run, Naruto sat up and started looking around the room before his eyes landed on the spiral mark on the back of his right hand. He concentrated, and in a flash of yellow light his mother's sword appeared with its edge shining in the light. He didn't know how long he was staring at it for, but judging by the fact that he heard the water being turned off, it had to be more than half an hour. Yugito re-entered the room soon after with a towel wrapped around her, another hung over her shoulder and another holding up her hair to dry. When she saw him staring at his new blade, she sat down beside him, letting her semi-dried hair out of its towel. "What are you doing?" He looked up at her, trying to find the words. I don't know what I'm supposed to fight for anymore. Back in Konoha I fought because I had people to protect, but now, he turned his gaze back to the sword he held. What good is a weapon if you have nothing to use it for? Yugito couldn't say anything to that, knowing that she hadn't really experienced complete loneliness her whole life and then discarded. She thought what it might have been like if she had led a life like he did and was saddened by the mere thought of it. She slipped away from him and unsealed her nightgown from a scroll. She put it on knowing he wasn't looking and discarded the towels in the nearby basket before sitting back down beside him. You'll have to find out the answer yourself. No one can do it for you, she gently whispers and nods towards the bathroom. Go take a shower or something, you can worry about this stuff later. Yeah, you're right. Naruto stood and proceeded towards the bathroom. He stopped at the door and looked over his shoulder at her. Hey Yugito. The Kumo nin looked up at him and asked, what is Naruto? Thanks for coming with me on this trip. I'd be dead right now without you, he told her. He shook his head. Thanks for everything. He entered the bathroom a moment later, and after a few moments the sound of running water filled the room. Yugito just stared at the place he stood, feeling her cheeks heat up and knowing it wasn't because of the warm climate. What is wrong with me? She shook herself and brought her hands up to her cheeks to cool them. I'm acting like a schoolgirl, damn it. I don't like him. But he just drives me insane. What's happening to me? Wave Country. Tazuna's house. Later that night, after everyone had fallen asleep, the sounds of a low sobbing could be heard. Hearing the same thing as he did during their travels, Naruto awoke to the sight of a dimly lit room with the only source of light being the moonlight shining through the gap in the window's curtains. Sitting up straight, Naruto turned to where the sound was coming from, the other bed. It took a few seconds for his eyes to adjust to the darkness before he could see clearly that his room was curled up in the bed sheet, sweating heavily, appeared to be crying in her sleep. Mother, she whispered between her sobs. Climbing out of bed, Naruto approached and shook her. Hey Yugito, Yugito, wake up. She shook from the contact and her eyes snapped open. Are you alright? It looked like you were having a nightmare. She was breathing heavily, but she nodded. I'm fine, thank you. Naruto looked skeptical as her breathing seemed to even out. Do you want to talk about it? Yugito wiped her eyes to get rid of the tears and nodded. I've had nightmares every night for as long as I can remember. I'm plagued by them. I usually just sleep in the same bed as Kurabi-sensei to settle my subconscious mind, but he's not here right now. Why didn't you tell me this sooner? I could have woken you up if you were having trouble sleeping. Asked the ex-Konoha nin. Yugito shook her head and looked away. I didn't trust you back then. I've always had issues with trusting people. Does this have something to do with your mom? She stiffened at his question. I don't mean to pry, but you were muttering about her in your sleep, Naruto said hastily so as to appease any anger she might have accumulated at him. She sighed and explained, meeting his gaze with a sorrowful expression. My mother, she was killed by a secret group of Kumo Anbu that had gone rogue 10 years ago when I was 6, called the Blood Howlers. Naruto watched as her face contorted in rage, sadness and fright. They just came barging into our house and cut her in half right in front me. Naruto rushed over and grabbed her, holding her to him, allowing her to let her new wave of tears to fall onto his nightwear. She buried her face into his chest, crying throughout the night until she fell asleep. He didn't say a word as he tucked her back into bed and covered her up. He sighed and made his way back into his own bed knowing that he'd need his sleep as well. He rolled over so he was facing away from his roommate and looking up at the curtains. After about 10 minutes however he felt a presence enter his bed and hug him from behind. "Why Yugito?" he asked looking over his shoulder as she buried her face into the crunch of his neck. "Thanks for waking me Naruto." She had fallen asleep. Naruto didn't know what to do but felt his own fatigue catching up with him and soon fell into unconsciousness also.